Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, delegates, a very warm and hearty and bright good morning to you all. We hope you enjoyed the evening last night. Thank you. As you can see, the esteemed chair and the speakers have already taken their seats on stage. So we're all set to kickstart day 3 of the 32nd International Publishers Congress. We start this morning with a session which is entitled Book Markets in India. This session is being chaired by Mr. Ashok K. Ghosh, Chairman and Managing Director, PHI Learning Private Limited. The panelists on stage, we warmly welcome them all. We have with us Ms. Emma House, Deputy CEO, the Publishers Association UK, Mr. Andre Beat, Managing Director, Nielsen Book Research UK, Mr. Himanshu Gupta, Managing Director, S. Chand & Company, India, and Mr. Vikas Gupta, Managing Director, Wiley, India. A warm welcome to you all. And now a brief introduction to the esteemed chair. Mr. Ashok K. Ghosh, Chairman and Managing Director of PHI Learning Private Limited, is known for his vision and strategy of internationalizing higher education publications and pioneering low-cost world-class books on a mass scale in the early 1960s. Mr. Ghosh, a founder member of FIP, has been twice president of the Federation. He is currently the member of FIP's Executive Committee and the chairman of its International Relations Committee. The FIP holds Mr. Ghosh in high esteem and consults him as a mentor and guide to the Indian publishing industry. For his selfless service towards education and publishing, the FIP conferred on him the Most Distinguished Publisher Award, the Lifetime Achievement Award, and FIP was proud to honor him with a special and exceptional award, the Saraswati Samman. That's who is chairing this session, ladies and gentlemen, this morning. And I now hand it over to you, Mr. Chairperson, sir, to take the session forward.
Good morning. I was thinking there will be more people in the morning because when I read my biodata, somebody was trying to show it to me. I was very impressed. Had I known that this is my biodata, I would have told, don't bring it here. That is why people have not come. They already know me. What do you say? No, I do not have a prepared speech to chair, but I would like to say a few words and try to prolong it a little bit because I think that more people are on the way. Some are finishing their breakfast. Some are on the way in the traffic because this is the time when a lot of people get caught in the traffic. But I think give 5 more minutes and we start. Hello, you have come all the way from Calcutta to listen to Vikas Gupta, am I right? Yes, Trideep. He is the... Yes, come all the way. He told me, telephone, I am coming there only for Vikas Gupta. He is the guy who organizes Calcutta Book Fair, Pradeep. He knows about Bengali publishing. If you want to know, he will tell you. Now, what I wanted to say that in the morning, first I have to introduce Emma, but before I introduce Emma, let me tell you something, what I wanted to say this morning. I woke up in the morning at 4, and this is all real, no story. At 4 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and I said, it is too early. The meeting is at 10 o'clock and time at 9:30, I should be here, have a cup of coffee and get in. So a lot of time. So I said, I am not going to take so much of time. So what do? So I read a book which Nitasha Devasar gave me, present. And I was under the impression that we all were involved in it because her people, they were coming to me and they also published an interview there in this book. And also the Federation also brought out a book which is in the kit, Book Publishing in India, Innovation Meets Experience. But I highly recommend, because this I have not read as yet, but there are very good articles and almost from the same people. And here, almost anybody you know here, they all have contributed. But best thing I liked about this book is my quotation. And I read that out first thing in the morning, what Ashok Ghosh says. Just two lines. Then I start. I did not read. I said, how my name has come here. Natasha, in the introduction, what Ashok Ghosh says. Let me just see. Huh? Who is saying? Natasha, you come here. You know where it is. Huh? I wanted everybody to see you. You have done a lot of work. I thought my whole speech will be on you. You give big hand, Natasha. You really have done very well. Where it is, the quotation, where we are talking about money.
Yes.
Because I only, very good, thank you. This is the message she knows me, that this guy talks money. I do not talk about print run, this, that. In the words of Ashok Ghosh of PHI, a veteran publisher with over 50 years of experience, the future of publishing looks promising. That is very good. If you are in it, put your mind to do better, make more money, produce more books, find more readership, maximize your sales, and get more results. That is the message. So there is a very good message, and there are many articles here, and all the subjects which we are going to discuss about India and Indian publishing covered very well. Those who are buying this book, I think it would be worth it. And if you keep this book, you actually need not have to consult anybody what you are going to do in the next 1 year. That's what I thought that I should give. And Natasha, I congratulate you once again, because you have done this in a very short time. Federation also has done something like that. Great, great credit. And to that little lady, you know, she did not, her father, I knew her father actually, her father's marriage I attended, Sheta Khurana, and he's daughter of one of my friend's brother-in-law. I did not know that, but she interviewed me. She's an excellent worker, must say. Now, let us now talk about the very senior people. Emma House, wherever she goes, she becomes my boss, and she is the boss. So permanently I call her boss. Ever since I met her, she was at that time representing, I think, London Book Fair, if it is true, and trying to promote London Book Fair in a big way, telling everybody to come. And I still remember, I think, when she was about to change, I think it was in Seoul or someplace I met her, then she was contemplating of coming to PA. And again, as you know, PA is a very powerful organization in the publishing world, because there is no corner of the world where PA is not represented. So much so, I met people from AAP. They say, whatever PA does, we just agree with it. So that is a very simple thing. PA, that means everything is okay. So they take the responsibility. And Emma has been working now for a long time, more than a decade now, almost a decade. Huh? 9 years, 9 years. She's been working, and I thought that she would be the best person to speak about a foreigner's point of view. Because when we talk about the Indian market, we see how we see it. But first, let us hear it from someone who is visiting India, and she knows everything: trade publishing, fiction, non-fiction, science, technology, anything you can talk about. She has been there, and she knows people. She knows who is doing what, how many people are employed, everything she knows. So first, let her start, and after that we go to the next speakers. Okay? And we will keep time schedule, because there is one speaker less. So we have got time, so don't worry about time. Okay?
I should have a PowerPoint, please. No, that's not the one. Okay, I'll get started whilst they try and find the PowerPoint. It's called Indian Book Market if you look on the pen drive. Okay. Well, firstly, I'd like to thank Mr. Ashok Ghosh and the Federation of Indian Publishers for inviting me here to speak. I'm sure everyone will agree that the past 2 days have been very interesting and seen some fantastic speakers and some wonderful hospitality here in India. Don't worry, I'll do it without. Oh. Okay, it's okay, don't worry. So welcome to India. I know that for many of you, this is your first time to India. And although we are on day 3 of the Congress, I hope you've got a good feel for what India has to offer beyond the world of Bollywood, curry, and cricket. I'm going to give you a quick run through of some of the publishing insight I feel visitors to India should know about. Over the past few days, you will have heard some very impressive statistics about India, which I'd like to add to with further impressive figures about the publishing sector here. So, as we know, India is the 6th largest economy in the world with a nominal GDP of $2.45 trillion. And India recently overtook China as the fastest growing economy and is expected to jump up to rank 4th on the list by 2022. The GDP here is still dependent on agriculture. However, the services sector has definitely picked up in recent years and now accounts for 57% of the GDP, whilst industry contributes 26%. India's fast moving towards becoming an established knowledge economy. India has 22 official languages. English is one of them, but Hindi is the most common. Marathi, Malayalam, Bengali, and Tamil languages also have a strong culture when it comes to reading. Now, as Mr. Ghosh referred to, this is the book that's been edited by Natasha, specially developed for this Congress and on sale at the back of the room. And will provide everyone with some really valuable insights, and some of the information from my presentation came from this book itself. So the publishing industry has a really long history here in India and has really boomed in the last few decades. It's now behind only the US and the UK, ranking 3rd in the world in English language publishing. Many successful Indian publishing companies are family-run businesses passing through the generations. In the last 20 to 30 years, however, we've seen many of the multinational publishers set up their Indian offices, firstly as joint ventures, but over time becoming wholly owned subsidiaries. For many years, foreign direct investment into India was very limited, but this began to change with the economic reforms in the 1990s, leading to a real movement in journal publishing from around 2003, and the market has opened up since then. We now see over 9,000 publishers in at least 16 languages other than English, forming a colourful publishing industry which accommodates the multinationals, independent and family-run publishing enterprises in the English and the Indian languages. English language publishing in India stands at around 55% of total publishing. 35% is constituted by Hindi, and the other Indian languages make up the remaining 15%. As I'm sure we'll hear more from Andre, the book market is estimated to be around $7 billion, dominated very much by academic and schools publishing. And important to note that consumer publishing forms only a very small percentage of sales here. But to give you a flavour of the types of consumer books which are popular, by genre, children's books, of course, romance and sagas, crime thrillers and literary fiction, popular psychology, mind, body and spirit, as well as economic and management books. The best-selling books in 2017 ranged from a number of world-leading imported books, famous names like Harry Potter, Dan Brown, John Green. However, many homegrown Indian voices, many of whom have great standing on the international stage. So the impressive statistics about population, economic growth, the size of publishing would all encourage those looking to India for the first time as a market destination for either publishing themselves, selling rights, or exporting books here, would see India as a market of great potential. There's a population of 1.3 billion that is fast growing. There are increased literacy rates. There's increased investment in education, a fast-growing middle class, and a much greater promotion of books and reading. However, the industry does face many challenges, some common to us all, but some unique to India as well. The size of the market is underestimated, with many book sales going unrecorded due to sales through the pavement newsstands and smaller outlets. A number of publishers, especially in the Indian languages, don't use ISBNs. Importantly, for those looking to distribute here, the pricing model is squeezed in every direction, from big increases in property prices and staff salaries, but a challenging supply chain and distribution system, which sees high discounts and extended credit, coupled with low levels of pricing and minimal increases in book pricing. As a result, it's much easier to make sales than it is to make profitable sales, and certainly being paid promptly has its challenges. Piracy and photocopying is commonplace, as we've heard over the last few days. But moving on to what I feel is an incredibly exciting feature about India and really needs to be showcased, and that is online retail. India is in a rare situation of what the Hindu Business Line called in a recent headline a two-horse race, Flipkart versus Amazon. First to the e-commerce market was Flipkart, which began its life in 2007, founded by two ex-employees of Amazon with venture capital funding. They started out with books and addressed the nascent e-commerce market by introducing a cash-on-delivery model that is still used today. It's been a turbulent journey for Flipkart, including a phase when they faded out of the book-selling picture altogether, but especially when Amazon entered the market. Flipkart has, however, managed to attract investment from Microsoft, Tencent, from eBay, and 10 years on from its launch, in August last year, the Japanese internet giant SoftBank invested over $2.5 billion in Flipkart to become one of its largest stakeholders. And rumours are afloat that Walmart could be its next significant investor. Looking at the e-book market, however, this remains a very, very small percentage of sales, hovering at around the 5% mark. Flipkart launched its e-book store in November 2012. However, the e-books catalogue was bought by Rakuten and Kobo in 2015, and customers were transferred across to the Kobo platform. And this really was in recognition of the overwhelmingly dominant nature of the physical book market here, and Flipkart's decision to focus on this strategic direction. Amazon took its first step in the Indian market 5 years after Flipkart in 2012, when it launched Jungly.com, a site which allowed customers to compare their prices online, but not purchase items directly. But this did help Amazon build up a really strong data, bank of data and information. At that time, Amazon was not allowed to stock and sell its own products due to Indian regulations preventing multi-brand retailers from selling directly to consumers online. In 2013, however, Amazon launched its marketplace, selling books and video content, and that is the model that is still in operation today. In 2016, it made its move into publishing and purchased Westland, who we heard from yesterday with Kartika. It was a major distributor, but started publishing in 2007 and fast became one of the top 5 English language trade publishers in the UK. The two e-commerce giants now compete fiercely, not only in books, but notably in the mobile phone market. With the fast-growing market of smartphone users, the online marketplace in India is one which is amongst the fastest growing in the world. So we watch this two-horse race with keen interest. So moving on to the book culture in India, and I take a quote from the publication I mentioned earlier from Thomas Abraham, MD of Hachette India, who says there is a need to develop a book culture first and then the retail culture. And certainly here in India, the book culture is changing and growing. Firstly, with a boom in bookstores across the country, including major chains, Crossword and Oxford bookstores, as well as a number of fantastic independent bookstores. This market, however, is becoming challenged, as we're seeing across the world. More recently, however, is the rise in popularity of literary festivals and book fairs, and anyone who has visited the Delhi World Book Fair or the Jaipur Literature Festival will have seen the hunger for and love of books that's really being fostered here in India. And if you haven't been to either of those events, I thoroughly recommend it. The National Book Trust of India, the nodal government agency responsible for books, plays a major role in encouraging reading and literacy, especially in more remote places of the country. And they can really be commended for one of their campaigns, which is called One Book in Every Hand, a nationwide online books donation drive, especially targeting books to be donated to underprivileged children, and really aims to build a reading habit amongst them. So the general view of all of these developments is that India really is fostering the reading culture. Self-publishing, this is very much increasing in popularity in India. Kindle Direct Publishing is now possible in a range of Indian languages, as well as the emergence of a range of other self-publishing platforms, including White Falcon, Partridge Publishing, Notion Press. Another issue which has been featured over the past few days is the matter of freedom to publish. It's a topic which is hotly debated here in India. Whilst being a fiercely democratic country, India does have defamation laws which make publishers, not just authors, subject to criminal prosecution. A section of India's penal code criminalises deliberate and malicious acts intended to outrage religious feelings of any class by insulting its religion or religious beliefs. Such acts, which the law says can be spoken or written, are punishable with up to 3 years imprisonment and fines. This played out in a very public case in 2014 with a book by author Wendy Doniger called The Hindus, An Alternative History. It was banned for its controversial content following an extensive legal battle. This case and other similar cases have prompted concerns for free speech here in India. Despite the challenges that the Indian publishing industry faces, there's a huge amount to be optimistic about. It's never a dull moment in this land of opportunity, and I, for one, really look forward to seeing how the market develops, how it continues to address the challenges and seize the vast opportunities that continue to build in this book-loving country that produces world-leading content. Thank you.
I would now like to invite Mr. Andre Britt. He's from Nielsen. He's the top guy of Nielsen from England, managing director. And Nielsen also, we are very grateful to Nielsen because Nielsen came to us a few years ago, and Federation also wanted to have their help in collecting data and API, and in fact API has got more money. They put more money. API, they put more money, Vikas Gupta and his people. So they put more money and we put less money. But we got the 2015 report, which has helped us tremendously. I'm sure they are going to now come up with new data. And today in the morning, Mr. Dr. Ashok Gupta and Nandi Mehra gave me a very, good suggestion. Earlier yesterday we were talking about it, that government officials are coming and talking that what is the quantum of losses because of photocopying you are losing. And what they can do about it, they would like to know the quantum. And that, to be very honest with you, neither API or FIP on their own can they do. I suggested in consultation with them that why don't we talk to Nielsen? Perhaps they may be able to do this job, the sample survey and all that. So that would be a great thing. But basically, why we have got Mr. Britt to address us, because when he gives the statistics, we will not be having doubt, because it is based on solid sampling, solid work, and otherwise I will be saying that we publish 90,000 books per year. Somebody will say 100,000, somebody will say 120,000, so it has got no base. Here we can say Nielsen says so. This is one, and before I invite him, I would like to introduce Awasthiji. Please stand up. Awasthiji is the Secretary General of Authors Guild of India, and as you know, we are working together with Authors Guild of India and those who are in reprographic rights organization. I do not know whether Caroline Morgan is here, IFRO boss, and they all will be meeting you. You stay here so that you can talk to them, and many people would be interested because they should know that you are also a professor in Delhi University and you support us, so that is a good thing. Authors Guild of India. Okay, Andre, please, it is yours now.
Okay, good morning, everybody. First of all, thank you, our esteemed chair, and also thank you to everybody for inviting us here and having us, and thank you for your attention. I might be from London, but I'm originally I'm a South African, so I've been enjoying watching the South African cricket team lose in India. Also, as you look at this presentation, there are a hell of a lot of numbers in it. You don't have to try and write them all down. If you see me afterwards, I will email you a copy of the presentation and you can peruse all the numbers at your own leisure. As we have worked our way through this Congress, I've altered this presentation and then altered it again as various different speakers focused on different aspects. So I aim to show some of the things that we have heard about. We've heard many speakers talk about India's population revolution, or the change in population, and how young the country is. I aim to illustrate how significant that is with these graphs here. And you can see that the median age in comparison to other large economies is extremely young, and the growth rate is extremely fast. It is almost impossible, I think, for us to imagine how large these numbers are. They're just numbers, but what it represents in terms of economic opportunity and also economic challenge is huge. We've heard about the Indian publishing report that we did in 2015, and at the moment we are asking for input and feedback into what should go into the next one that we work on now. After that report here, we can see the breadth of the market, the number of publishers, the number of languages, and how lucky we are that English, for us internationals, is so well used, which enables this market also to have such a huge international reach. Again, something else that we've heard about from other speakers is the size of the book market being larger than Bollywood here. And this is illustrated here if we look at the wider entertainment landscape. That publishing, I think, often, and book retailing underestimates its importance in the wider creative industries. Almost every film was once a book. So I'd even argue that the film industry is even more closely related into the book industry. Again, we heard from Emma and from other speakers about the size of the education market versus the trade market. Not to say that the trade market is small, But with such a young and growing population, there's a huge need for educational materials and for professional materials. And we can see that here in the size of both the school market and the higher education market. Everybody loves a good acronym, so I'll say what actually CAGR, or the compound annual growth rate, which is a good old financial term, stands for there. So it indicates the incremental growth over a period of time, which I think is a useful way of not only looking at something year on year, which can fluctuate a lot, but over a longer period of time. And a compound annual growth rate of 19% is almost unheard of in most industries. If we focus in on the school book markets, we can see how this splits between primary, secondary education, and upper primary. It is a large and complex market, and something that you could easily spend a whole presentation on. Attempting to do that in the short space of time that we have, if we look at the other parts of it, the higher education market and the general education and professional, we can see how these break out, and how overall the education market within India are being hugely healthy, holding huge opportunity, but also many challenges. The trade book market, which we've heard a lot about as well, and local languages, or rather Indian languages, actually covering 45% of the overall book market. The leading language within that of Hindi, of which some of you may be aware that we have launched a Hindi book chart, which uses multiple methodologies of physically surveying bookshops as well as collecting retail EPOS sales. English language fiction remains popular and is dominated by authors who are also popular internationally, such as Chetan Bhagat and others. Adult non-fiction, a larger section of the market here, also once again illustrating the link into professional or non-fiction areas, and then children's books. The consumer perspective. There's a lot of numbers on this slide. The only one I want you to really focus on is the number of ISBNs. If you see that line there with the 383,286. That is the number of unique ISBNs each week on sort of average that Bookscan measures in India that sell at least one copy. Again, it's a huge illustration of the scale of the book market. That is a vast, healthy ecosystem of product. It though does also always create that problem that other speakers have also talked about, where for the consumer, almost having too much choice means that many products are not necessarily profitable. And it is an eternal challenge of publishing to not only have more product that is not sustainable, rather than having focused product that is actually profitable and sustainable. Where do people buy books? And we can see here again, and I've highlighted in red, how important schools and the educational retailers are. However, as well, happy to see that the second largest or second most important channel remains the independent bookshop. If we look at languages, English is preferred by 56% of respondents or surveyed consumers here in India, and for professional or business, it is 90%, illustrating the importance of the English language. Again, also something that we've heard from other speakers, how e-books in India are not how consumers actually prefer to use their content. And having attended many conferences now over the years, I heard many times about the death of the physical book. And I would say that the physical book is well and alive, and ultimately, if we look at what our consumer would like, in India, the consumer has definitely indicated that they prefer a physical book. also something else that we've heard about from other speakers is the cost of the book and also the profitability of a book. You could do a similar slide in many countries, and it never ceases to amaze me to think that a whole book is able to be produced, edited, and checked, and then copywritten and printed and distributed and sold to me for less than the price of a cup of coffee. Fundamentally, within our supply chain, the value of a book should perhaps actually be higher than it is. In summarizing, I would say that these are some key facts about the Indian book market. It has a young population that is rapidly growing. It has a large and growing export and importing printing industry. It is creating a huge number of new jobs. It has an immense educational market and educational challenge. It, though smaller, has a healthy trade publishing market, and its consumers continue to prefer print books by and large. Thank you very much for all of your time and attention. That's a lot of facts in a short space of time. I'll be around later if anybody would like to come and talk to me.
I'm now going to invite Himanshu Gupta. So we all remember him. Only day before yesterday, he threw a fantastic party. So we all know Himanshu Gupta entertained us day before yesterday. And we all know in the book industry because it is his grandfather who founded the Federation of Indian Publishers. He was the leading light of Indian publishing industry, and so is Himanshu. And Himanshu has been running Eschan now for quite some time as managing director, I think, since 2007, but he has been in the business for a long, long time. Even, I think, as a child he was involved. So, no, yes, it is true. Yes, it is true. Yeah, he was traveling with his grandfather, so he knows everything. So, Himanshu, please, because you are our leader, future leader, current leader, so you should be speaking and guide us.
Very good morning to all of you. And I think I will thank FIP, Mr. Ashok Ghosh, for inviting me here for this panel discussion. And I'd like to thank my speakers. I think most of the topics that I'm going to say most of the things have been covered. The statistics have been covered. The Indian publishing industry from the point of view of MNCs have been covered. But I'd like to mention some important key highlights from an Indian publisher's point of view, which are important for people like us, especially in the field of educational publishing. Because Eschan Group today is a pure educational publisher, so we do not do any kind of general or trade publishing. We only purely do school publishing and higher education publishing. So my thing will be focused on that. So as Andre had mentioned earlier about the market size of the Indian publishing industry, so education industry, if you see the education sector in the whole publishing industry, dominates the complete sector. So it's more than 94 to 95% with the education publishing industry is. And they are close to, as he said, 9,000 publishers, close to around 5,000 publishers in the school publishing industry itself. It's a very highly competitive market in the school publishing industry. I was speaking to some of my friends some time back and asking them about I talked to a German publisher, a German school publisher, that what's your competition in your country? So they said there's a very tough competition. We have total 4 publishers in the school market in Germany. It's like, how do you say it's a tough publishing? You come to India, my friend, there are 4,000 that compete in the same market space. So unfortunately or fortunately, Indian education industry, especially the school publishing industry, has been coming in with lots and lots of players. Even foreign players who were never in the school publishing industry have now in last 3, 4 years, 5 years, have come to this space. And the reason being that why people have come to this space is a very simple, logical reason. As I said in my speech also, India has got one of the largest school-going population of close to 260 million students. So this is a very important point that people are coming into the school book industry. And out of that, 110 million students, or close to 40%, are private school-going population. That means 40% students are going to a private school. And in India, the private schools, unlikely like in developed countries, like in US, and UK, and Europe, and other countries, where the private school education is quite expensive. A parent can shell out anything between $25,000 to $50,000 a year in sending their children into a private school education. In India, an English medium school, what we say is a private school, even a person can put your child to a school today for $2 to $3 a month, ranging up to $2,000 to $3,000 a month. So there's a huge wide variety of private schools available in the country, from the low income classes to the high income classes. So you can put your child. But why am I saying this? The important part is because all these children will require private publisher books. Most of the private schools in India use private publisher books. Definitely there is a market for the NCERT, which is the government-run body, which also is also a publisher, also sells its books. And we have heard a lot of controversies happening in the last 1 or 2 years. But they have a market share estimated by our management estimates as around 12 to 15% of the private school space, especially in the CBSC segment. So we believe there's a huge opportunity which is today available with the Indian publishers, especially the school publishers. So total of 110 million students going to school, I estimate average a student will use 7 to 8 books per grade that the private school publisher, the private school child will use. So approximately you're talking about 800 to 900 million books which are being supplied mainly by private publishers and some from the government agencies as well. And that is why the market is increasing. If you talk about 20 years back or 25 years back, this whole school publishing population which was going to a private school was less than 25 to 30 million. So that jump has made sure that lots and lots of publishers, lots and lots of people are interested in coming to school publishing business. And as Andre mentioned, there's a higher CAGR, the compounded annual growth rate. I personally, I'm part of the industry, the numbers may be correct, but I feel the market, the practical numbers, if you go into the market situation, would not be closer to 19%. I would say they will be closer to 10 to 12% in the school book market. That will be the realistic number. But the issue is India, why India? This is the third largest, as she said, Emma said that India is the third largest country in the world in terms of the number of books being published. I say India is also the second or third largest country in the world in number of volume of books being sold in this country. So volume is a very important point. But what happens to the value? When we talk about a book being developed in US, as Andrew said, a book is less than the price of a coffee in India. I would say even a coffee is more expensive. I would say an Indian book is less than the price of a McDonald's burger in India. Why? The book is, a school book today is only $2. An average selling price of a school book today would be close to $2 because I'm selling a lot of school books. An average price of a higher education book beyond 12th will be less than $4, which is in India. But if you compare it to developed countries like US, Europe, the books will be like a school book, correct me if I'm wrong, Emma, will be anything between 20 to 30 pounds, something like that. And maybe in US, maybe higher. And a higher education book, maybe $100, $200. So we are far behind, but the volumes in India are staggering. That is why we all are here, because Indian economy is growing and the publishing industry is definitely growing. But I would feel there are a lot of challenges that the publishing industry is facing in the last couple of years especially. The paper prices have increased tremendously over the last 2 years, specifically in the last 1 year, because of shortage of paper globally, because of the China issue. Because of that, the paper prices globally have increased, and specifically for people like us in the Indian publishing industry who have to sell their books as $2 to $3 a school book, we are facing a lot of prices. Because India is a very, very price-sensitive market. India, even if you increase the price by 7 to 8%, even if your paper prices have increased by 12% or even 15%, the customer comes back to you and says, we don't want to increase that many prices because books are getting more and more expensive. So as we know, the books in India are the cheapest in the world, but still our customers feel the books are expensive. So how do we manage those problems? How do we ensure that we are able to give good quality content, we are able to give good quality service to our customers, but at the same time we maintain our prices which are low, are the lowest in the world, and ensure that the book is readily available to our customers on time? It's a big challenge. There is no, I would say, one answer to this question. There are many many problems. Every publisher is dealing with those problems. We ourselves as SCHAN Group are doing that. And SCHAN in the last 5 years has looked at and acquired and majorly invested in a lot of publishing companies. We have acquired companies like Vikas, we have acquired companies like Madhuban, acquired companies like Saraswati, acquired even a regional publisher like Chaya Prakashini from West Bengal, who's one of the largest education publisher of West Bengal. Our strategy is that we need to have good quality content. We need to have a bigger catalog, bigger bouquet of content available where we can penetrate more deeper markets. We can go to more schools. We can reach a better audience. We can reach our target audience. And even the regional markets, I feel, are growing. And there is large potential in the regional markets where the vernacular languages are used by the school publishers. So as a strategy, we're looking at more of these, I would say, regional publishers in the near future. And there also, I feel the digital content today. People talk about that digital content. I remember 5 years back when I was trying to raise, I would say in 2012, 6 years back almost, when I was trying to raise my first private equity round in SCHAN. Every private equity investor I used to meet, I met close to 25 or 30 of these investors. I used to meet, everybody used to ask me the same question. The print industry is dead. There's no need to have a print industry. Everything is going to go digital. And today, 6 years later, I meet those same investors and I used to tell them, print industry is never going to be dead. Print industry is going to evolve. Print industry is not going to be dead. The infrastructure in this country does not allow every teacher or every student or every school to use a digital content. The printed books are required and printed books would be required. And today all those investors say, you were right. The one investor who had made the investment with us, a couple of investors who had made the investment with us, I think they got their good returns on their money and they must be happy. So I feel that people today don't say that digital will take over. Digital and print go together. Today also in our books, most of the school books, we are providing digital content. It's all about blended learning approach. It's all about hybrid learning. So school books are, and especially also higher education books, are coming out with where there is book plus digital content. Digital content can come in terms of web support for the teachers. Digital content today is coming in apps. Digital content were previously coming in CDs, but obviously after the GST and everything and people not using the CDs, so more and more apps are coming in. So lots and lots of more things are coming with digital, with books. So digital is not a disruptor. Digital is an enabler. And as an enabler, as a publishing industry, we should accept the reality. As I said in my speech also a couple of days back, that the issue is that the digital revolution in India is here to stay. Digital revolution in the mobile data feed, if you see the low data cost consumption in India, started by Reliance Jio around 1.5 years back, when the data in India was expensive. Today, the data in India is one of the cheapest in the world. Today, you can get a 50 GB package per month for less than $10 a month. Anywhere in the world, I don't think so. You go travel anywhere in the world, you will get that kind of cheap data. And today, 2.5 billion GBs of data is being consumed by the consumers every month. And 12.7 billion apps were downloaded last year in 2017. Why is it important? Why am I mentioning these numbers here again? The important part is we as educators, we as education providers, we should not only talk about ourselves as pure print publishers, we should look beyond that. We should think about education. We have to provide quality education. And today the youth is wanting to use data, wanting to use mobiles, and they have the free access to use that data at a very cheap cost. So we have to make sure that we provide education-related content, good quality content on those apps, on those mobiles. So these people are able to use, these students are able to use that in their mobiles. Rather than only talk about only printed content is here to stay for sure. I have no doubt in my mind that printed content is here to stay at least for next 10, 15, 20 years. I don't know beyond that. I'm into the print content. I sell 45 to 50 million books a year. But definitely digital is an enabler. Please use that technology. We are using this technology very much. We have come out with a book, first time I think in India. Lakshmi Singh is our famous book for science. In India we sell around 250,000 copies each. And we have come out with a VR glass, a VR headset, virtual reality headset that we are giving with the book. we are giving a virtual reality app free with the book. When the child can download that app and can use the glass, it's like a Google Cardboard glass, the child can use and see a lot of immersive virtual reality content. So there are people, there are technologies which are available to us, not at a very expensive cost, but we have to adapt to them, we have to make sure we adopt them and use them for the benefit of the children, for the benefit of the teachers. Lastly, I'd like to say, as Andre's report, it was India is growing, and the school market and even the higher education. Just the higher education space, I think Vikas will talk about more on that. I will not like to mention it, but I feel the higher education space is just going through some tough times. A lot of consolidation happening in the industry in terms of number of colleges getting shut, or the seats which are vacant in the colleges. That is affecting the book publishers as well, because we are directly related. But I feel in times to come, it will turn around. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for allowing me to have a discussion here. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I know some of you are looking at the watch, but please do not, because we started late. And Vikas Gupta can take as much time as he needs. This is what I'm going to tell him. But I said, Mr. Peter Wiley and Matt Kishner, I said that I will introduce Vikas Gupta in one line. Everybody knows Vikas Gupta, and that's the end of it. But I would like to say something which everybody may not be knowing. I have worked in the field here in India for a long time, and I have seen Vikas Gupta going from place to place, promoting books. But he's very good in computer science himself. He has written some books which sell. I think one of them sell quite a large number of copies. So he, as an author, is collecting a lot of royalty, so he knows that. Am I right? You free of royalty, or you charge royalty to Wiley? I think you are charging it. Yeah. He gets good royalty amount, and he's earning, and he worked to popularize these user-friendly computer books. You know, I don't think that any professional will be studying computer science today or any other technology without books published by user-friendly computer publishers. So Vikas, I want you to come. He is also a very good leader, current leaders of Indian publishing, and let us hear his address.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ghosh, as usual. So today I'll be talking more about the future side of publishing. We have learned about the size, we have learned about what we are doing now. We also Himanshu talked about what they are doing from the future perspective. But there are a few questions I'll ask in terms of, we as publishers, we never learn from our mistakes. So we started a business where we thought everything should be in-house. So we wanted, let's get a printing press in-house. Let's create our own size of paper. Let's do this. Let's open a paper mill. Let's do this. So everything is in-house. But then we thought that is it a competitive advantage? It's all available outside. We are in the business of producing content. We are not printers. We have very good printers in the room here. We are not distribution companies. So we all today use same distribution companies. We buy from same paper mills. We use the same printers. But when it comes to learning in the future, we all want to own our own platforms. Why? Are we in the business of platforms, software, or what? We're in the business of content. So why can't we just stick to the content and create a model around that? Let's create an industry standard, maybe not for profit. These are the platforms, everybody can use it, and let's fight only on the smart content side. YST said we are not in the business of e-books, we are in the business of digital smart content. So that's my perspective. Think about it, that why we are fighting a losing battle where, like smartphones, everybody created their own OS, but now Apple and Android. Still, the smartphone business is growing. Every smartphone company is making money. So why the hell everybody should have their own versions of software? Fight where we are good at. We are good at content creation. Let's fight that battle instead of being, let me own the entire ecosystem, I will have everything. That way, the whole adoption of digital or the whole adoption of how we look at the future changes dramatically. I'm not saying that we will own it or you will own it. That's a thing which publishers need to decide. And market forces will decide what is good or bad. But you need to put your forces behind. A user cannot have different experiences. If I'm using an academic book, 10 publisher books are used in this semester, all are different, their digital experience is different, the way you use it different, you will never get adoptions. But if the area where you say, this is the way the book is, all books look same when you read them. The pedagogical elements in a textbook are nearly the same. Some minor changes here and there. But when it comes to digital, everybody has their own version. And people get worried. They don't want to use something where they say, oh, every time I have a steep learning curve to use something new. That is the biggest challenge we face as publishers, that what we have learned in the past, we are not in the businesses we should be, and we are still trying to do the same mistake again and again. Think about it. It's a bit controversial, but I think it will give you some perspective around what I want to say. So I'll just talk about publishing in the past from academic and learning perspective. So there were two people, student, teacher, and a book, that completed the entire learning ecosystem for thousands of years. No other person required. You need students, you need a teacher, you need a book. Book may be in any version whatsoever, nothing else required, and everything was fine. And till date even, that is still going on. However, now population is more, schools and colleges are less, teachers are less, too many students can't afford to go to schools. You have multiple access to technology, you have skill-based training requirements, so the book, teacher, and student is not enough. We are fighting the losing battle if we say that this is the only thing we have. Himanshu was saying that you need to combine everything together. Otherwise, you are fighting a losing battle. You are not a part of the ecosystem which book was a primary member. Now there are multiple stakeholders. So if you want to be somebody of value, you need to look slightly differently. Okay. Second, content. Past, get the best author, create the best book, done. But now, in the digital world, anybody can create content, anybody can critique on content, anybody can publish content in multiple forms. I will not go into those details. So how do you handle yourself as a publisher? So this is the past, this is the future. If you understand it, I think that gives a lot of answers in terms of why I am saying let's fight one battle, because there are many battles to fight. This is something which I really talk about is, what do millennials, people who were born in the millennium, think about, expect out of content? What they expect out of content is, I need to be immersive. It has to be, I have to immerse in content. I just don't want flat content. I need to feel it, I need to experience it, and that's what makes me attracted towards it. Otherwise, I'm not attracted. They want to have a fan following. If a millennial is somewhere, they want something, a tag or something where I did this and it is published. They want to be a part of that. If I'm learning, I should be telling people this is what I know and this is what I don't know. So they want some kind of, as a word which is a very typical millennial word, fandom. I want a fan following. I need to be the desire in the know. I want continuous learning. I don't want learning to be something which is a book published 1 year ago, 2 years ago. I want continuous learning. And then I want resources to succeed. Resources to succeed is very different from resources to pass an exam. Resources to read something. It is like, tell me what do I need to succeed. That's what they need. Now that's another thing which you see in the bottom. So we have two silos, the edtech companies and publishing companies. For an edtech company, 80% of their investment technology, 20% content. Publishing companies, 80% investment content, 20% technology. What is the problem? 80 and 80 make 160, not 100. You have 100 on the table. That is where the challenge of technology not being fully integrated with content is coming. You need to bring everybody together in a way that the number put together is 100, not 180 or 190, whatever the number is. That's another problem where the integration of technology with publishing is not happening the way it should be. Okay? So what next? So we have changing patterns. I think everybody has discussed. I will not spend much time in how the content is created, how the content is distributed, how the content is consumed. So this is digital disruption. We all know that. I will not spend much time on it. I think other speakers have talked. But what is the role of publisher? I think we should become platform providers, and everybody should be in the business of creating smart content. What I mean by that is that if you can create smart digital content and spend all your resources in doing so, platform will become just like printer or the logistics guy who distribute your books. Think of platform from that perspective. Let's not over-invest on platform and under-invest on content. And content means smart content, immersive learning, virtual reality, simulations, videos. All of those is part of that big word smart content or digitally smart content. If you start thinking from that perspective, then look at, can subscription be a way of making money? Can a freemium model where the core ebook content could be free but the rest we charge? And third is pay and earn. This is a new one. Pay and earn means students can be a part of the platform, basic. If they answer a question or if they give a solution and give some contribution, they earn. Otherwise they consume. So it's a pay and earn, a model which allows people again to have a reason to go digital. Without a reason, people will not go digital. So think the role of publisher should be running that digitally smart content platform, and where flat content to content and experience is what we bring on the table. We are not in the business of technology. We are not in the business of distribution. That's not what publishers are. We are in the business of smart content creation. Okay. Now what can India do? India is the factory where all of this is happening. We are creating AI, we are creating smart content. We have companies who can do that. We have all the capabilities to create these things. We have all the infrastructure and the ability to do all of this for the world. So think, when you do something like this, India is not the only market, it is India for the world. Thank you very much.
Would anybody, we wanted to have another speaker to talk to us about, publishing in regional languages. And I am given to understand there are some guys. I yesterday had the name of Mr. Devajyati Datta. He is here. Devajyati, is he here? Devajyati, please come. Can you speak for a few minutes, maybe in Bengali? Bengali publishing. You need not have to speak in Bengali. He is a very good, very learned man, Devajyati Datta. Please, come here. You can use English. And there is Mehta, Mr. Mehta, Marathi publisher. Mr. Mehta is here, no? He's not come here today?
No, he's there.
Anybody from Hindi? Prabhat has not come. Anybody would like to speak on Hindi? Nobody? Please. Say a few words over here.
Thank you, Mr. Asha Ghosh, for permitting me to speak here in this August gathering in the IPA Congress. I belong to a publishing sector which is a regional publishing sector where general books market is very good, and whatever Himanshu Gupta said about Chaya Prakashani, the largest educational publishers in Bengal, but they are mostly publishing their most publication is in English language. And Bengali as well. Yeah. And I am telling about the total Bengali language, regional language, which are mostly being nowadays in language sector. And that market is mostly, primary market is mostly governed by the state government publication units. That's why the private publishers have a little scope to play in those publishing sector, but yet there are some private schools which teach in Bengali language, but mostly the private schools, they go for English medium and they go for English textbooks, but the Bengali language textbooks are mostly taught in the outside the main city areas and some in the city areas, but mostly in the outside the city areas. But there is a vast market of that because there is a first time learner are in that sector, and which is a very, very niche sector. And if you can give a new scope of education or the things to come in the Bengali language, then it is very popular. And we are doing so for last 50 years. Though we publish a mixture of journal books, dictionaries, and educational books for primary students mainly, not for higher education. So I can speak about the primary education sector only. In higher education also it has been taken by the government, but a few publishers are in partnership with the government, but the rest of the publishers are having a very big problem in publishing sector. And the Bengali language as such has around 60 million people, and we export the educational sector in Bengali also to Bangladesh, because that is a very new market, because some of the contents of here in Indian Bengal is not matched with the subject factor of the Bangladesh. But but the readership in Bangladesh is much more. So we are trying to make a system where one book with certain changes can be done with in Bangladesh and in West Bengal. So that is the way we are trying to do it. But the primary sector, which I told that the government has taken out, and that is a huge market, and that is the situation in Bengal there. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Although we started late, we have got some time, and I am not going to give another speech. I don't think you require that. But we need some question and answer. I'm quite sure that you may have some question, because Vikas is talking about a lot of things, change our business and all that. And he is telling me for last 6-7 years, we are all hearing, and of course content is the main. So Himanshu Gupta said, you may be having some questions. The other thing I wanted to tell you, particularly those who have come from outside, that we have got many languages. As you know, in India, it is like Europe. You know, each state has got a separate language. And each and every single language because with the computer it has become friendly. So language publishing also will be much easier. And I am quite sure that my experience is that Hindi books will sell more than English, anytime, because the population is such. So there is immense prospect future, and I do not worry too much about government competition, because if your content is good, there will be no competition. So you have to work on that, which Vikas is very right. So let us have some questions, because we have got some time. These people you do not, Yes, please, sir, ma'am. Maria Prante, Chief Executive of Association of American Publishers. Please.
Thank you for such an excellent panel. So we know that the population is very young. We know that the focus is on education. But I wonder, given that highly educated young people become adults at some point, whether anybody would like to comment on the potential for the trade market, because I would assume that the goal is lifelong learning and even reading for pleasure. So we seem to be reiterating that education is the focus, but what about 10 or 20 years from now?
Hello. Should I take it? Yeah. So, sorry. So, I agree that definitely the trade and the fiction market is growing, and I'm not the right person because I'm not personally involved too much there. But as per the presentation by Andrew, it's like 24 billion rupees is right now there, which is right now a small market. But yes, definitely next 10 to 20 years, a lot of people would be looking at reading this fiction and non-fiction books. What platform they'll be reading in, which medium they'll be reading in, that's difficult to say as of now. But definitely people will be reading through even digital mediums like Kindle or whatever. And I think trade and general publishing definitely will grow. But because India is a very, I would say it's still not reached a level of evolution where the Indian reader is very evolved in terms of the reading, because he is reading educational material because he needs to read it. He has no option but to read it because he has to succeed in his career in life. But eventually maybe they will also do a lot of leisure reading in times to come.
I think I'll just add to that is that the bigger challenge for trade publishing in India is piracy, because that is one part of the value chain of flat book, and now in the digital world, million people download the same book and maybe 100 of them buy it. So it's not about the reading is not decreasing, it is increasing dramatically. It's people are not paying for it. So as education increases, definitely the young population reads more, and that's a global phenomenon. So India is not, and we are very much knowledge hungry people. But the problem is, are you willing to pay for it? And are you actually paying for it? That's a different story.
Thank you. Question? Yes, please. From that side, somebody raise hand.
I just want to make one.
Yes, Mr. Saikia. Yes.
One clarification. Wendy Doniger's Hindus, we took over the rights. It's still very much available. After we took over the rights, it's not a banned book. It is available here. We've sold, a banned book in India sells more. So we've sold 30,000 copies, and it's still selling. Just a clarification, so you know the truth.
So what you are recommending, we should be banning books so that sales go up? That is a very sure, that is a very good solution. Thank you very much. I never realized that. You ban, you tell the children not to buy books, and then they will be buying it. That's good, very good. Good one.
This year, one of my books was banned in Jharkhand. We immediately sold out and reprinted and sold out again.
I'll try this from tomorrow. I'll try. After I go back to my office, I'll start. Dr. Gupta, you want to ask something? Oh, Andre, please.
That's okay. About reading for pleasure, I wanted to add that the trade market will inevitably grow as people grow up, you're right, and it's an interesting question, and I think it's quite a complex answer. I think some of it is also, and we've talked about the languages, because many people prefer to read in their mother tongue for pleasure, and I don't think that publishing is necessarily caught up with that. And as that then changes, more people will read for pleasure. So I don't think it is that the demand isn't there. I think that actually the supply isn't there, or the supply is there, it's just unofficial or unmeasured or not known by us here. And it's our challenge as publishers, absolutely, to supply that. And it isn't only a problem in India, it's also a problem in South Africa or anywhere else where you have multiple languages, where people prefer to read for pleasure in their mother tongue, not in English. They learn in English maybe, but then they'd like to read for pleasure in their mother tongue.
One more question, one more we'll take. Anybody?
Can I speak?
Yes, who?
I am from the Studium Press publication house. Sir, I heard very good lectures today morning from the panelists, and I appreciate their efforts in presenting the data. And my question is that we have talked about the that quality improvement of the contents. So when all statistics have been given, I was interested in having these statistics for how many publishers they are getting reviewed or peer reviewed their books which are coming for the publication, first thing. Secondly, for the books which we are publishing, how many people, how many publishers they are getting indexed in the like Scopus and Web of Science like that, which is very important nowadays. Just I want to know that things. Thank you.
So there is no data available because there is no mandate to do all of this. So whatever data I throw up, it has no value. But publishers, by design, do not do that in terms of getting indexed in Scopus and all. In terms of peer reviewed, I think publishers are getting smarter. They understand just throwing something out there is not going to sell. So I can say the quality of publishing overall in India with small and big publishers is much, much better now, and is getting better day by day. But it's a very competitive marketplace. You cannot just sell anything anymore. So I think market forces decide in terms of what publishers will do to make quality more. But in terms of getting indexed and Scopus and all, that's a mandate has to come. It is not going to work about that.
Sarojini ji, you wanted to ask a question. She is Sarojini. She is from our IRRO board, Authors Guild of India. You want to say something?
Just wanted to know what sort of content is banned, and even after banning, how the books are being sold.
Oh, Manas Saikya will
That is a big question. We can't while away this because we are into it and we want to know what sort of content is banned. I think a little answer, I must get some answer for this.
Good question. I
Thank
don't
you.
think many contents are banned. Manas Saikya, please, would you like to answer?
I've had the experience of books being banned. My publishing firm is called Speaking Tiger. And the latest one that was the case, I can give you, the legislature in the state of Jharkhand banned a book called The Adivasi Will Not Dance, primarily because of it was about, one of the stories was about a woman who was willing to sell her body for some food. And because of that, there was a legislature passed a resolution that this hurts the asmita or your pride of the Adivasis, so therefore it has to be banned. The legislature sent the resolution to the first secretary, to the chief secretary, and the chief secretary did not know what to do. He created a committee. He suspended the author, and that's what happened in that particular case. But created a committee.
Okay, I think that's good enough. You know, we should not be having a long discussion on that. Let me tell you, I think basically a woman has got all the right on her body. You know, it is a fundamental right. I don't think there are many cases. I don't think, I am not a lawyer, but I know this because my uncle, Dr. Basu, he was an authority on constitution, and he was very, very conservative in person, but he would defend the woman has got all the right on her body. What she is doing, no Jharkhand government or any government can say. Moral policing is different. This is different. So this is just what she is saying in general.
Yes.
In India, books are not banned, general. Otherwise, every other book should be banned.
It's actually not the government doing it. It's
these
another,
we
the
cannot do like-
caste, the community.
No,
That they are pushing it.
that can happen anytime. Right now, I say that this Congress is bad, it should be banned. No, that is not going to work out. But in any case, we got your points, and we will see at least whenever any delegation goes to any government, we can talk about that. Please retain our freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and whatever is guaranteed by the Constitution, we uphold it. That should be our main thing. Thank you very much.
Asoke, please.
Yes, Ana Maria.
I give many speeches about piracy, and I always say that when prices are very low, there is no piracy. I want to know what happens here with piracy and photocopying, since you have the cheapest prices in the world.
Another session, I think, is there. On piracy, we are having a session? Yes, I think there is. We have got another session. Piracy, the publishers are taking care of, Federation is taking care of, we are taking care of. Individually, you go, you try to find out. There are, did you hear what Mr. Rajiv Agarwal said when he came? Rajiv Agarwal from the Ministry of Commerce, copyright, he said that now everywhere the police station, each police station, they are also told, because earlier they never had time to run after the people who are violating copyright, even if you cannot go register your protest and all that. Nowadays, they are possible. Here, in India, we are talking about.
Thank you.
Okay? Thank you. So, should we be present? Now she is going to take care. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for making this session very interesting. Thank you, sir. Well chaired. Everybody enjoys listening to you. And now to present mementos to the esteemed speakers and the esteemed chair, we start with Ms. Emma House. May I request Dr. Ashok Gupta to please join us on stage and kindly present a memento to the esteemed speaker. We'd like to thank Ms. House for joining us for this session. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Gupta, for presenting the memento. We'd like to thank our esteemed speaker, Mr. Andre Breed. May I request Mr. R.C. Goval to kindly join us on stage to present the memento to the esteemed speaker.
Very nice, very nice.
Thank you, Mr. Breed, for being a part of this session. Thank you, Mr. Goval, for joining us on stage to present the memento. We'd like to thank our esteemed speaker, Mr. Himanshu Gupta. To present a memento, may I invite on stage Mr. Pranab Gupta. Thank you, Mr. Himanshu Gupta, for being a part of this session. Thank you, Mr. Gupta, for joining us on stage to do the honors. We'd like to thank our esteemed speaker, Mr. Vikas Gupta. To present a memento, may I invite on stage Mr. Ramesh Gupta. We are being joined by Mr. Mittal. Thank you, Mr. Mittal, for doing us the honors. And now to present a memento to the esteemed chairperson, Mr. Ashok K. Ghosh, may I invite on stage Mr. Peter Wiley. And may I add from one legend to the other? Sir, I don't think, I thought so too. And I really do not think that we can present any memento to do justice to your stature. Let's put our hands together on that, ladies and gentlemen. You tower above everybody else, sir. It's been a pleasure to have you here with us. And it's time now to bid farewell to the speakers in the esteemed chair of the first session, which was entitled Book Markets in India. We are now quickly move on to our next session, which is entitled Strengthening Education Publishing Capacity. May I request you all to please take your seats back in the audience, please. And before we move on to the next session, may I bring your kind attention to the Agra trip. As you all know, there is a trip which has been planned. In case you would still like to register for it and have missed out registering for it yesterday, the registrations are still being accepted, but only till 12 noon today. And please do make a note for those of you who have already registered and are planning to go on that trip. Please do make sure and make a note, a very careful note, that there will be a breakfast in the morning, on the morning of the departure at 6:30 a.m. Please do make sure that you reach for the breakfast on time, which starts at 6:30 a.m. This is to ensure that you leave on time, since the buses will leave from here. So please do make sure that you reach for the breakfast on time at 6:30 a.m. sharp. And meanwhile, for those of you who are still interested to register for the Agra trip, you are please requested to contact the registration desk, which is in the Alamgir Hall. So ladies and gentlemen, we are not taking a break. May I request you all to please kindly remain seated. We are starting with our next session, which is Strengthening Education Publishing Capacity. This session is being chaired by Mr. Wilmar Deepkron. He is representing the Westermann Group, IPA Educational Publishers Forum Chair, Germany. Let's put our hands together and give a warm welcome to the esteemed chair. The panelists for this session are ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, the esteemed chair and the esteemed speakers are taking their seats on the dais. So let's give them their warmest welcome. Our esteemed panelists are Jaume Vicens, Managing Director, Vicens Vives, Spain; Mr. Brian Wafabarova, President, Publishers Association of South Africa; Professor Dinesh Singh, Director, Mathematical Sciences Foundation and former Vice Chancellor, University of Delhi; Mr. J.S. Rajput, former Director, NCERT; and Mr. Ratnesh Kumar Jha, Managing Director, Cambridge University Press. Ladies and gentlemen, may I once again have your kind attention, please. We are not taking a break. May I request you all to please kindly take your seats. We are ready to start the next session. I really do not know what the conundrum is all about, but may I request members of the audience who are standing on the left side of the hall, if I could request you all to please kindly take your seats. I really am beginning to feel like a teacher in an unruly classroom. A brief introduction to the esteemed chair. Mr. Deepkron is an international educational specialist with long-term experience in educational market in Germany and Europe. He has been in the publishing industry for more than 30 years, and in the last 15 years, he worked as managing director at Bildungswerkbank EINS, a leading company in vocational education in Germany. Wilmar previously worked in the education and legal tax divisions at the Wolfers Kluwerfond Infinitas Learning Germany. He is one of the few individuals who has done that successfully in both publicly listed companies, private equity-owned and family-run businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, the esteemed chairperson, Mr. Wilmar de Croo.
So, good morning, everybody. I want to welcome you on behalf also of the EPF within IPA, and want to use the opportunity to say a few words about EPF. EPF within IPA means Educational Publisher Forum, and the forum was founded in 2009, and since 2015, this Educational Publisher Forum is also an official committee of within the IPA. We are a unique organization because you do not find a global organization like this on education. Normally you see that educational publishing is always local, and for this reason there is no international organization talking about educational topics like we are doing. I'm sharing this EPF together with Jean Vincent, who is sitting there since April last year. And within this EPF organization, we are at the moment talking about some important things. One of the things is copyright. We have about 77 members coming from 36 countries. There are, to be honest, we are a little bit more oriented at Europe at the moment, but our objective is to get worldwide members. And so if you are interested in education, we would like to ask you to join us and to join our meetings. Our topics at the moment are, what I said before, copyright. The other topic is digitalization in education. We see it in every country that this is a very important issue. And the third very important thing is the value of publishing, because we see in every country that our customers, that the state and all the things do not know what educational publishers are really doing. We are doing much more than producing only textbooks. We are doing teacher training. We have a lot of additional products and all things. So this is a very important thing that we are looking for. And within this value of publishing, I think at the moment we think that one of the most topic is diversity. Diversity in all areas. Diversity in the school, in curriculum, in teachers training, teacher things, in products and all the things. And for this reason, we think that diversity also on the competition side is important. And for this reason, we believe that local publishing, strengthen local publishing is very important. Our main risk at the moment is in many states the one book publishing that we see. So governmental publishing, there are more and more trends that we see developments on the political side to one book publishing, and we think that this is a risk, especially when we talk about educating young children, because then the government has a strong approach to, on the one side, they are doing the curriculum, on the other side, they are employing the teachers, and on the third side, then they are also publishing the products that are used in the schools. And this is a trend that has also to do with freedom to publish. So I'm happy that we can now talk about how to strengthen the local publishing, and I want to introduce to you now the first speaker. We will have 5 speakers, and we will have, at the end, we have the possibility to have a Q&A session. We already, when we had our preparing meeting before, we already had a very interesting discussion, because I think there are different presentations and different views on education or how to strengthen it. The first speaker I want to introduce is Jean Vincent.
Thank you very much, Wilmar. First of all, it's a pleasure and honor to have the opportunity to speak here, to speak in front of all of you, this audience, that shaping the present of education, the present of publishing, and will be shaping also the future of educational publishing, of all the educational publishing ecosystem. We have challenges and many opportunities, and I intend that this presentation is going to be quite disruptive, since technology is disruptive. Okay, so we know that technology is shaping, it's growing at an exponential growth, and this will have an effect on the education and on our industry. As an example, in the European Union, right now there is a discussion about proposing granting legal status to robots, categorizing them as electronic persons, and worrying that the new legislation is needed to focus on how these machines can be held responsible for acts and omissions and even pay taxes. So right now, something is changing in our world. We are publishing in a new world. Until 2010, we used to publish our traditional textbooks, digital offline, CD-ROMs, and we were only providing this linear content. But in 2010, we had a disruptive invention, iPad, tablets, technology started coming into the classrooms, and then we're receiving digital natives. Our teachers are digital natives. They are coming from the millennial generation, and our students also are digital natives. This means a challenge for all of us as educational publishers. We have new educational trends. We have YouTube teachers, gamification, deep learning, augmented reality, artificial intelligence, blended learning, flipped classroom. Education is changing. So how are we reacting to this? We, as educational publishers, we are reinventing ourselves. We are creating educational models. We are going far beyond the traditional textbook. And we are diversifying in paper and in digital all these new contents so teachers can use, categorize these modules the way they want. We are the new educational publishers. So going to the way we transfer technology to local publishers, here's the traditional way where content was created, then we used to have copyright protection, licensing, and a financial return. But that's the traditional way that we used to do things. In the old century transfer, it was only one way. So we used to adapt that local curriculum to our know-how, our paper know-how, with basic marketing strategies, and we used to provide with offline training programs, helping local publishers with just these 3 items. But now, things are getting much more complex. We are assembling technology, educational technology, from all over the world. We get that technology and we are assembling it, in our case, in our company in Spain. And then we are retransferring this educational technology, in our case, to many local publishers and governments in Latin America. It's a different way of transferring. We are sharing and we are reshaping educational content, educational technology. So right now, this is the way we do it. We work on models, so what we transfer, it's our modular content to local publishers or governments, but we also transfer and share digital platforms, customer relationship management platforms. We also transfer and share our online training systems and even our strategies on social networking with teachers, schools, and families in all those countries. We share the whole pack. We share everything. So all this content and all this sharing is labelized and we pixelize So we can follow what we're doing with this. And this is shared with local publishers. So we can improve what we're doing for the educational community in a constant feedback to improve quality for teachers, schools in all those countries. So we have, as I said, paper modules, printing on demand, paper copies which are always related to digital licenses, digital modules, so instead of just selling one book, we can sell service, like an annual license to have full access to all those digital modules. And of course, we're sharing also our inbound marketing. I have no time to go on what we do about inbound marketing, but we all know that we have to share our social networking. So we also see an increase in digital teachers platforms. For example, in this case, there is one specifically for Latin America or Latin-speaking countries with more than 1 million teachers geolocalized. Okay, and they are speaking and sharing also all these modules, all these educational modules between them. Some of these modules are free. Some of these modules, they have some royalties. So nothing is black or white. They are gray, where all kinds of educational resources can coexist. So, way of merging, I think, it's a way how we shape the future. We have to merge this innovation with this local experience. And the main thing is that we have come to realize that if we understand this transfer or more, this sharing of technology as a whole ecosystem, then technology can be one of the best allies to copyright protection. As Alan Turing used to say, we can only see a short distance ahead, but we can see that there is plenty that needs to be done right now, all of us. Thank you very much.
Jerome, thank you very much for this presentation. I think yesterday we heard from the lady from Amazon that education is the biggest market. I'm not happy that they have now found it out, but I think I hope they see that education is not only publishing or selling books. It's more. It's a whole ecosystem that educational publishers have to deliver, and it's more than only selling a little bit. So thank you very much. Our next speaker is Brian Bafarova, President and Publisher of the Publisher Association of South America. Brian.
Well, I wanted to find out, I know you can hear me, but can you see me? I tend to absorb all the light that hits me, and fortunately I have white teeth. I will smile now and again, and you'll see me. I am also former chairman of the African Publishers Network and current chair of the Publishers Association of South Africa. Mr. Chair, the topic is about strengthening education publishing. And I really feel that we have made tremendous progress in terms of strengthening education publishing in Africa and the developing world. And if I remember my days as chair of the African Publishing Institute, we trained thousands of African publishers and placed them in the industry. I know that in South Africa today, the Sector Education Training Authority uses 1% of the salary levy to create internships and pump new professionals into the sector. I also know now that in terms of improving education outcomes, our members are beginning to build learning solutions with integrated analytics that really help track learners' progress against desired learning outcomes with critical interventions if learners are falling behind. So we have made progress. I am not suggesting that we stop trying. I know we are continuing with that. I am on the exec of the IPA, and I know that it's a major concern, and there are initiatives there. I was talking to Jürgen Boss of the Frankfurt Book Fair. They have initiatives there as well. We are working with WIPO. There are initiatives there, so we are doing good work. What I'm really concerned about is that sometimes I feel like we are trying to fill up a leaking bucket. What I mean by that is that whilst we are making all this progress with regard to strengthening capacity in publishing to a point where, if I compare it with the days when I went to school in the 80s, where every book that I used was virtually from elsewhere, an imported book, to a point where in many African countries today, all books that are used in education are local books. I really feel that if you look at the pressure that we are facing today, we have a leaking bucket, and there is a very rapid erosion of that capacity, and we have to stop the leak whilst we try to fill the bucket. I concur fully with Francis Gary's view of market failure. In fact, the first day here was not the first time that I heard him use that term. I remember at the SCCR meetings that we have in Geneva, he pointed out that what we were facing, particularly with the onslaught against copyright, was a classical case of market failure. To illustrate that just briefly, I want to point out that we have on one side very strong and aggressive activism on access to education, calling for universal coverage of textbooks among learners. And what it does is that it puts pressure on policymakers to come up with interventions that make sure that that is achieved. If you look at South Africa, for example, there is a very effective organization called Section 27, which has taken the government to court successfully on every occasion about making sure that every learner has a book. And what that does is the government argued that the Constitution provides for progressive realization, which means as long as we are getting there, it's okay. But the argument that was that any learner who goes through their education without textbooks has actually been maimed for life. There is nothing that your progressive realization can correct that. So the instruction was immediately make sure that every learner has a book. And the government tried and stepped up, and in 2012 we had their biggest year. They tripled their expenditure on textbooks. And I warned my colleagues at that time to say this is the beginning of the end, because they will now realize that money is not their problem, and they will come up with new laws to address this. So the idea was, can we go to government, suggest that add another 25%, you are on 50% coverage, and we'll give you 100% for an additional 25%. The feeling was they will double that, and we will be okay. And what hit us the next year was the one textbook proposition. So what that then does is that due to these global campaigns and fiscal constraints, they tend to go towards OERs. They come with draconian laws that begin to erode the business that we are in, and it creates what I call the vicious cycle. With that vicious cycle, we start with the demand for universal access. It leads to adverse copyright and procurement policies. From there, you have an investment and professional flight. What happens is that the larger companies that have elsewhere to go leave. The local guys restructure their cars and they convert them into hearses, and they go into funeral businesses and wait if there is another opportunity to come back. Then you have the collapse of the sector. There is reduced output in terms of content and learning materials. So the vicious cycle continues. What I would like to suggest is a more holistic and viable systems approach. And I want to take a critical systems heuristics and normative management approach that says, in addition to asking the question, what are they doing? We also ask the question, why are they doing what they are doing? What is it that informs the actions that they are taking? But we also ask ourselves very critical questions to say, what role did we play to get where we are? And what role can we play with the solution? We tend to look at what they are doing when they react and concentrate on how we are affected, and we don't have adequate anticipation to manage the problems that cause negative policy change. I would like to share with you very quickly something that we have been working with colleagues at WIPO, where we have used the baobab tree as a motif of African publishing because we want to take a holistic, viable systems approach. The baobab, for those that have visited the content, it's a special one. It's not like the baobabs that you find elsewhere. It's an ecosystem in its own right, and it's a very robust and resilient tree that survives for hundreds of years in the worst type of drought that you can imagine. And what we are doing is that below there, we have the roots and the nutrients, and those are the creators, the authors, the illustrators, the rights holders, and the professionals. And then we have the trunk, and the trunk is what we refer to as the policy environment. It looks at the VAT policy, copyright policy, and procurement policy, and national book policies. What that does is the trunk anchors the top part, which I'll talk about later. Any baobab that has anything affecting its trunk, whether it's collection of water and rotting, really comes down, it tumbles. There is a story of the baobab as a very powerful tree which once challenged the gods. And the reason why it looks like that is that the gods in retaliation turned it upside down, and it now has its roots in the air. So we believe that if there is no proper anchorage through adequate and correct policy, the whole part will crumble. What you have there then is our industry, which are the branches that take that IP, that take that creativity and feeds it into the leaves and the fruit to create that prosperity that we see there. And these are publishers, content aggregators, distributors, and all the others, including us as publishers and booksellers. At the top there is the fruition that all of us are concerned about, which includes our contribution to the economy, employment, cultural articulation, and quite a number of things, including royalties that we pay, and many, many other things that benefit society. And at the end, we are hoping that when that fruition happens, some of the fruit, as you see there, sorry, I'm not sure what's happening here. We are hoping that some of the fruit there will fall to the ground and be part of the growth, create new baobabs, pay authors, pay illustrators, pay rights holders. The way we are using this is really to talk to policymakers like we did at the Yaoundé conference and get them to understand how that system works so that we don't come up with negative policy systems. I would like to move on very quickly to the next stage, which says the first part is to avoid negative policy change, as I premised in at the beginning. Work towards universal access ourselves. We must try and leverage digital and licensing to enhance access. We must place the sector within the national agenda and plan. In most cases, you'll see countries have a human capital development plan. Let's place ourselves within that national agenda. Work towards demonstrable improvement of education outcomes. When we go into a school, let's record what the performance was like in that school before we intervened. What was it like with our intervention so that we can demonstrate the efficacy of our activities within schools. We need to create strong alliances with partners in education, including organizations like Section 27. The other part is that I would like to talk about is that no matter how you try to preempt things, sometimes wheels come off. What do you do when wheels come off, like we see in many, many places? We need to assert the role that education plays in improving education outcomes. We need to go beyond education to include the investment, employment, and our role in the national agenda. I think we tend to talk too much about what we do for education and shy away from our contribution to the economy. What we realized in dealing with parliamentarians is no parliamentarian wants to hear about job losses because that's how they lose their jobs. So we carried out a survey, we put money into carrying out a survey with PricewaterhouseCoopers and presented the figures, and there was a completely change in conversation when we introduced that. I would like to emphasize that when we talk about the statistics, like in Jose's presentation, we go beyond talking about what we are doing, what the reality is, but also to say what is the potential. With Africa's young population, what is the potential of this industry if we take proper policies? The other part is we need to deploy data and proper statistics to back our claims, and we are working on that. We have to identify and highlight policy contradictions. If you look at the various departments in government, they have contradictions within those policies. Highlight them. Talk to those departments and highlight the contradictions so that they can correct themselves. Identify more credible champions of your cause. It doesn't matter with my skin, with how relatively fed I am to go and talk on behalf of poor, starving authors. They will tell me off. The authors can tell our story better. The learners can tell our story better. Let's deploy those if we believe that we have a good contribution towards them. Then I would like to end with this slide here to say, identify and lobby informed, sympathetic legislators. Among legislators, among the opposition, there are people who understand the issues that we are grappling with. Outside those formal processes, engage them, get them on our side, and the conversation will change. We need to understand the objectives of policy and change and provide win-win alternatives, which is what I premised at the beginning. Let's suggest the solutions before they come up with more drastic ones. And if push comes to shove, look at consider legal options. Considering legal options includes looking at whether even the procedures have been looked at. What are our rights? But I would leave that as a last resort. Well, I have a colleague in the audience whom I have a weird agreement with, and the agreement was if I get self-engrossed, he must shoot me. So before I give him reason to exercise that, let me leave the stage. Thank you very much.
Brian, thank you very much, and very impressing, the baobab tree, so I think that's a very good thing. Now I want to ask the next speaker, Professor Dinesh Singh, Director, Mathematical Science Foundation and former Vice Chancellor of the University of Delhi. Professor, please.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be present here, and I do not know what expertise I bring into much wisdom that has gone in today's session, even before. But I'm certainly a keen learner, and I'd like to learn as much as I could. At this point, I heard my predecessor, one removed, mention the European Union thinking about taxing robots, and I thought, I mean, it resonates with someone like me who's a married man. Once a man is married, he becomes a robot. And he pays taxes also, so I see no issue there. Okay? Also married. But anyway, that's an interesting perspective. You know, I'd like to sort of bring my own perspective, which is largely rooted in the Indian tradition and what is happening in India, even though I am exposed to certain other realms of such matters in other parts of the world. You know, we grapple with issues like copyright and quality and dispersion. But when I look at the tradition of publishing within quotes in India much before the time of the Christ, and if you look at books that have had universal appeal, wisdom, and have transcended generations and time, then I see that there was something special about them so that they didn't seem to have to deal with such issues. I speak of texts like the Rig Veda or the Upanishads, or even other systems of knowledge that India engendered. There were no copyright issues. The Rig Veda has no copyright associated with it. But there's something we could learn from there. Without dilution in quality, without an actual physical printed version, it dominated the entire Indian subcontinent much before the time of the Christ in fairly pristine form. So what was it And how did anyone survive if there was no copyright accruing to the collective authors of the Upanishads or the Rig Veda? So one, of course, there was enormous wisdom there, high quality content. There was this oral publishing tradition. The Indian tradition before the printed word came along was to transmit knowledge through the oral tradition. But they managed to do that without dilution of quality. So what was it that they looked at? This could be something that could help us gain some insight. And if there was no copyright, how did they flourish and how did they manage to produce so much knowledge?
Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there is an emergency behind the scenes. We just need to wait for a shutdown and power comes back on.
Okay.
There's a short circuit which is
Do I
happening.
lose time on that, or?
15 seconds. Have run the risk of short circuit, so we wanted to avoid that.
No, that's okay.
Really apologize for the interruption.
No, we can talk about it after that, okay?
We are back in business, sir.
My time begins now, sir. Okay. So I was talking about the Rig Veda. There were no copyright issues. They didn't really sell anything there. There was knowledge accessible to everyone. But there was something special. And it's not just about the Rig Veda, not just about the Upanishads, but all the books of knowledge in the oral tradition that allowed India's economy to flourish. And then the economy, because it was flourishing, and for centuries, India dominated global GDP. Angus Madison's work on economic history of the world from the 1st century till the 17th says that India dominated these 17 centuries for sure, with global GDP outpacing everybody else. So there was good knowledge coming which helped the economy to grow, and then because the economy was flourishing, wealth was plowed back into systems of knowledge which weren't charging any copyright or using any kind of royalty there. I don't know whether this is a workable model, but I will try and come back to this shortly in this brief time allocated to me to say how we could reinvent in a certain way. It may be a little futuristic, but I think we need to begin to start thinking about it at this point in time. But let me also narrate to you a simple experiment that I conducted at the University of Delhi when I was in charge there a few years ago. So once we reformulated and revised or recreated an entire curriculum. In fact, it was a much more holistic program where we were trying to redefine education. And our systems of learning were being redefined, the pedagogy was being redefined, and we needed, for this transition, some kind of material to take the matter forward in an easy manner. And so we got authors to sit together collectively and produce books, which also had online versions. And then we had an open system of bidding, and we asked publishers to come and bid, and we went for the lowest publisher. We had certain conditions. We produced 12 books, or maybe a little more, I can't remember, but around that much. Not a single book was priced more than about 100 rupees. They gave us 10% royalty, and in 1 year, 10% royalty on 100 rupees, it's 10 rupees per book. In 1 year, the University of Delhi accrued more than 20 lakh, more than 2 million rupees as royalty. So what was it? One, there was good quality. Two, the pedagogy was redefined so that in some ways education was redefined. Three, the numbers, it wasn't just those who were with us at the University of Delhi. Across the length and breadth of the land, this kind of learning material became very popular for that just 1 year. I had to withdraw the program for other issues which we cannot talk about here, but I want you to say that there is something here we need to think about again. I've also noticed in my limited experience with publishing in the US, I've had some connections, that publishers also need to re-look at themselves from various angles. There are straws in the wind that you need to be aware of. There was a very distinguished mathematician at Berkeley. Before the digital revolution really took over, he realized that books and publishing were becoming prohibitively priced and becoming more and more out of reach of the average student. So he began to author inexpensive textbooks that he would publish in his own garage and market university by university across the entire North American region. And each year he would turn up a tidy profit. Similarly, I noticed there's a research journal in mathematics of very high quality, which is totally freely accessible, has no backlog, so there's no waiting backlog when your paper gets published. It's totally online. And more mathematicians are beginning to publish over there because the quality is good, there's no waiting time once your paper is accepted. And I think we need to think about this. It's totally free. It doesn't cost much because now when you author a paper or a text or a book, you do everything yourself and the other person just has to put it up online. So where is it that publishers could relook and try and reinvent themselves? And that's where I'm going to finish. See, I have noticed many publishing houses, the large ones, have a huge storehouse of knowledge. They've got all kinds of books and all kinds of authors. But they are mostly in two forms. Either it's traditional hard copy, or there would be an online version. You need to tweak that and create that as a learning ecosystem in a more interactive way and begin to start, because you have a whole bunch of good authors with great credibility in terms of academic requirements. Use that resource to offer your own online learning systems. Give your own open badges. They are becoming more and more popular across the globe. If you look at Khan Academy, Khan offers, what does he offer? He offers a learning ecosystem that is totally free. And by the way, I'm not fully happy with what Khan does in many ways, in terms of the pedagogy, even sometimes in terms of the quality. But he's so popular. And if more and more of these get going, then traditional publishing is likely to suffer. But if you were to think about this, take one large publishing house, you could create a whole learning program based on some of the resources you have, so long as you've tweaked it, and use your own academic credentials with the authors that you have to offer your own certification programs as open badges. And take my word for it, some time back in this very hotel, the president of the American Council of Higher Education was addressing a whole bunch of people here in a lecture, and she mentioned that as she sees it, traditional learning systems in America in the next 15 to 20 years will begin to fold up in a large way. Not many will survive. And that's where I think publishing needs to look at things carefully and see. And she thinks, and I tend to agree with her, that largely it is a certifying process that will dominate. And that's where I think publishing houses need to think about that to try and reinvent themselves. Well, that's all I had to say at this point. I'll be happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your recommendation, and probably later some of publishers are here. Probably they can say something about this or how it already works. Now I want to introduce Professor Raiput, the former director of NCRT, and as far as I understood, maybe the biggest publisher in India.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished panelists, colleagues and friends. Sitting here, I recollect it was 1922, Mahatma Gandhi wrote a letter. And that letter he said, even if independence comes tomorrow, things will not change. We will have many problems. And he anticipated 4 major problems which we are facing now. But in that letter he also said that there is a ray of hope if education reaches everyone. That ray of hope, in early 50s when I was in the school, we were told about this. There were textbooks, 1 or 2 supplementary reading materials, and nothing else available to the learner. There were hardly any materials for the teachers. Subsequently, I learned that Gandhi has written about this also, about textbooks also. And he said, the textbook for the learner in the initial stages should be the teacher. And therefore, teacher is to be prepared. When I became the chairperson of the National Council for Teacher Education, my job was to establish an organization which would regulate teacher preparation institutions, both created through public funds and also by the private bodies. We began a certain premise, but subsequently, within a year or so, I realized that unless until you provide materials for the teachers, the very credibility of the organization will not be acceptable. We did it. We went to best of the minds in the country and said, why don't you write for teachers? I continued this when I became the director of the National Council of Education, Research and Training, NCERT, a very famous organization, everybody knows about it. The point I am making is, it is the quality of the materials that you publish. It is not only textbook for the classes that is necessary, and we know why, but something more is needed. 2 or 3 points I would mention. First, how many private publishers have thought that it is necessary to prepare the teachers? And this is not an easy job in India because there are so many diversities, right from languages to regions and so many other things, social, economic, cultural, and anything that you can conceive of. We will find out there is some diversity. When I became responsible for the formal publishing, as one of the parts of my assignment as the director of the NCERT, I tried to understand a couple of things vis-a-vis the private publications. I can say I was very much impressed by the type of materials that are now available in the market for the learners at each stage, in each category, and also for teachers. But there are certain issues which perhaps in the Indian context deserve a lot of attention from the private publishers. Transparency, particularly in our pricing policy, is something which creates some type of diversions within the system. In the NCERT, we had adopted a policy, and to our surprise, we found that even we go 20% ahead of the total cost involved, it is not a loss-making problem. I know this cannot be applicable to the publishers, private publishers, but it has to be different. It should be known to everybody. The second point I would like to make, you have to go to brilliant minds. Persuade them to write for small children, young children. Many of you are doing it. But remember one thing, this is a highly competitive world in India. There are issues of medium of instructions. There are issues that lead to competitive examinations. Why should a day not come when it should be possible within the school to prepare the child for any competition, and he should not be forced to go to coaching institutions, tuitions, and other unnecessary materials? We have come across institutions, schools, colleges, where unnecessary additional materials are forced on the children. One of the issues that must attract our attention, and maybe it is a global issue also, the curriculum load. Now, how long can you continue with a book? You change your curriculum after 5 years, maybe even earlier. We talk of frontline curriculum, and therefore the publisher and publisher's world has to be always on the alert. Always on the alert. And if you do not have intellectual inputs of the highest order, you will lag behind on 2 or 3 things. One, how all that which is now not necessary, how the obsolete has to be discarded. You also have to consider all that is necessary is brought into this. The whole pedagogy is changing. The Laws Commission mentioned in 1996, it was released, the report was released in 1996, and they talked about learning to learn, learning to be, learning to do, learning to know, etc., but learning to learn. Initially, it took some time for the people that the idea gets digested. Now everybody knows and realizes. And therefore, you have to create interest in reading. There are alternative learning opportunities. Many of them are there, and therefore the nature of textbook has to change. How will it change? It cannot change simply because one person comes, he starts writing and deleting here and there. The system that I headed has been organized over a number of years. Every 4 or 5 years we change the curriculum, we change textbooks. But this may not be the case with everyone. It may not be feasible also for every publisher, but there can be some type of collaboration, cooperation also. Because expertise, we are all worried about quality of education. In India, our major concern is we are not happy with the quality of education. We are not happy with the output at various levels, whether it is school education or it is higher education. Now, in 50s and 60s, the demand was for education. From 20%, we came to about 75% literacy, which is a big achievement when you also consider that our population has raised 3.5 times. We have great achievements, but we have the quality deterioration, a challenge which you must also accept. It is not only for the governmental agencies and the government and other things, but everybody has to contribute, everybody has to contribute. And it is possible to do so, it can be done, it should be done. Because unless and until the quality is improved upon, teaching learning materials are improved upon, all varieties of teaching materials are available, our dream of young India reaping the dividends, this demographic dividend, would suffer. And we would not like our young people to suffer. So the mission is great. Whether it's a government publication institution or private publication, we have to do a lot of things. We have our purpose is same. The purpose is prepare young people who have internalized certain human values, who are committed to certain principles, and this cannot be done if there is no transparency, there is no sincerity, no commitment, which they witness during their stay in the schools and colleges. And therefore, you have a big task. Collaborate with institutions which do the publications like NCERT, SCRTs. Maybe you also develop systems how to get the feedback from teachers, not necessarily from principals. They may have other considerations. From the students and teachers, the feedback can really be very, very useful, and we should go into this. I see a very bright future for the publication industry in India, because slowly a stage should come when autonomy should be available, when self-regulation should become a reality, and quality should become the concern of each and everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think we will have questions later for this. Now I come to the speaker, Mr. Ratnesh Iyer, Managing Director from the Cambridge University Press.
Good morning, for the colleagues from the industry in India, you know, if you have to speak after Delhi University and NCRT, what are we talking about? Actually, these are the two dominant set of questions which is there in the industry. In the last set of couple of quarters, we've seen a lot of positive outcome of what's really happening in space. But all of you know that we've really gone through a lot of changes in the last few quarters as various things progressed in terms of copyright or the sort of what kind of content in the school education and how exactly the private publicly really play a role. But I really want to go back to what Mr. Singh was actually talking about in terms of the past years, of the glory year of India, and India being the largest economy. And I'm going to bring back some of the discussion here to Asia, because it seems to be the continent which is going to be the continent of 21st century. And I think then I'll try see if I can relate to our speakers from Africa and Spain and see what are the kind of points they're raising, and therefore try bringing in something which can collectively look at what are the tasks carved out for us as a publisher and what are we mandated to do, and very humbly put it to all of you to kind of really ask if any questions are. Now, bringing back to our own discussion, in the last few discussions we've heard about disruption, innovation. In the last few discussions, the 21st century, what the learner is, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, virtual reality, all of that existed. But the reality of this country today, and if I look at it, is that there are about 1.646 million schools, 400 million children going to the school, and only about 60% of that is public. So largely the private publishers actually operate only in the 40% of which is a private publishing. So that's just a clarification for to say that we're going to change the country. We definitely want to change the country, and how would we change the country in terms of making sure that we are participative and we are part of the journey of growth of the region or growth of this country. Now, if you look at the public space in terms of our real challenge in the public space, our literacy rate in this country today is still about 76%. Let me tell you, there are countries who are doing 100% already, right? 76% literacy rate, and the state where I come from is still hovering around 60%, and there are states like Kerala, which is 100%, right? If you visit these two different states, you'll see a visible difference how education is really impacted. If you visit Kerala, you would see a larger set of educational institutions flourishing, private publishers joining up together, and they're doing a significant amount of job in terms of keeping the learners and the teacher and the educator in center and creating value. I mean, if you go to Middle East, and which is where our Prime Minister was there in the last few weeks, people really are there from some of these parts of the region. They are actually, the Indians there are doing businesses, creating value, basically the product of these states. Go back to my state, there is no public, there's no private, there are still dysfunctional sort of classroom, 40 children in a classroom, teacher is really ideal. You'd go to YouTube and say Bihar education, you'll only hear that the teacher is not able to spell something right, teacher is not able to do some maths equation right. That's the kind of diversified or diversity which we actually deal in this country. And we continue to have a vision to say that we'll become a knowledge economy and we're going to continue to grow at 7% and continue to disrupt the world. And India, which is a large part of the population of the world, about 1.3 billion out of 7 billion, would actually be a country which is will go back to the back days of our glory, where we're actually about 21, 22% of the global GDP. Now, this is where we exist as a part of the whole region. Now, going to the other parts of the world, our colleagues from Africa and Spain talked about, how exactly they are making a modular set of publishing and putting it to the technology space. And often the technology, publishing, pedagogy discussion really gets driven in a way that technology is going to disrupt. Everybody would learn from technology, and the pedagogy side, people would come in and start talking about, is that a challenge? Should we be scared about it? There are very little discussion which we do where we actually can merge both of this and keep the learners and educators in the center and therefore create value. Now, in the recent past in this country and the other countries adjacent to in this region, there are a lot of discussions about the whole startups ecosystem or the new set of technology players coming, and what is the role of a publisher when these technology players coming. Let me tell you, the content which is what we take pride of, and which is what Mr. Rajput talked about very passionately, the quality content. There is one set of questions about equity, which is 1.46 million schools, and therefore raise the bar of that, raising that 76% to 80% or 90%. And there's the other set of questions is that how do you look at in terms of getting that quality? Very little quality content exists. And a lot of that is essentially comes from private publishing. Those quality content which exists in that space is very little, but a lot of that comes from private publishing. So there is a definite pride which we all of us should collectively take it. But are we taking that quality content in a modular way, as our Spanish colleague here, in a way that we kind of collaborating with a new set of ecosystem which are coming up, the platforms which are coming up, the new technology ecosystem? Perhaps we are a little lazy there. And I think I see that as my personal set of experience. If we actually need to see a new world where there is a discussion about artificial intelligence, there is a discussion about machine learning, is there a way that we can become a little more agile, taking the capacity to build that equity and therefore raise this nation to become a knowledge economy and therefore drive the education together to make sure that we become a country or we become the region, we start actually getting some of the innovation going out of this country. Now, I see it more from local perspective, but I'm part of the larger organization as Cambridge University Press. We do a lot of these kind of work across the world. In terms of real set of capacity building, I think there is a time right now, and I'm bringing the discussion back to our own topic, given the fact that I have very little time left. I think the opportunity which I see is real engagement, and I think Mr. Kant, Mr. Rajiv yesterday very passionately talked about it, is that real set of engagement within the policy makers and the private publishing space. Is there a way that we can work together? Is there a way that we can play that copyright narrative right in the market? Is there a way that we can look at engaging with the technology players and therefore provide them an anchoring job to say that right learner or right educators get the right set of input from our side? That's the need of this hour. I think there is another need that the learner and the teacher who needs the maximum from, or the researcher who needs the maximum from our side, is there a way that we can actually start engaging with them meaningfully so that we can start creating an ecosystem where we become a part of the ecosystem and we don't lie on one side and they lie on the other side. So that's the second thing. The third thing, and which is the last thing which I would say, I think the making of the knowledge economy or making of a region as Asia as a larger to see that this could really be anchoring region, I think takes a larger set of ecosystem building. Now, ecosystem does not only have policy makers and we as a private player. There are existing set of large publishers supported by the government, right? They exist there too. There are technology players who exist there too. There are technology players who created their value. They become an NGO, now they exist too as well. Now, how do you actually look at making them all together and try see each of our stakes really gets taken care of? Very often we hear that we are very highly priced. I mean, we went back in our discussion and say that all of our private limited company, our financials are there on the public. Go and check what kind of margin do we make. Do we really make margin to be highly priced? Really not. Our colleague from Eschan, Himanshu, talked about $2 pricing, and that's a reality. This is the lowest priced market which we exist in, and therefore, if we collectively as an ecosystem try see if the center is of learner, try see if the center is of educator, and try see if the center of a researcher, and in the pursuit of making that knowledge economy start working together, I think there clearly is a time we can go back to the glory days, sir, and say that these regions start contributing more. And I don't have a doubt that we will grow at 7.5%. We'll continue to do well as country, and as a region we will do even better. So I think if we actually try to see vision of that ecosystem building, we could do a great job from our side. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the last presentation. So when we were in the preparation room, we talked about that we would try to limit our speech on 10 minutes because we think there are probably a lot of questions for this. Thank you very much to everybody for being in time. So that's, thank you very much. Now I want to open the session and want to ask you if you have questions to the speakers here. Are there any questions? So at the moment there are no questions. Maybe I will ask one question to start to Professor Reiput. I followed your presentation. When I'm coming from Germany, and when we have a new curriculum or something, then we always have 5 to 10 different publishers offering a new method to teachers or to schools for the new curriculum. And then we always see that teachers want to choose. They want to choose one textbook from one publisher, one from the other, and one from the third one. You never find that we have one publisher that's having 60% of the market, because teachers want to choose on their own, and there is also a very wide diversity in the classroom. About some have other students than there, and there's also there you have modern teacher, you have traditional teacher. How can you manage this, or how could you manage in this NCRT to fulfill all the requirements that people have at school?
You can use that mic here if you want.
This is something which I like to talk about. You see, I mentioned about the diversity. We have the linguistic diversity. We have different provinces, around 30 or so. Each one of them have a school board, and the school board has the autonomy to decide its own curriculum. It was realized that the children have to move from one province to another. There may be differences in levels of attainments, levels of prescription of the curriculum, and therefore there should be a body at the national level which will bring out which will be a research-oriented body. It will conduct surveys, it will conduct studies, it will see the changes that are taking place, and decide upon the levels of curriculum and learner attainments at each stage. This is what we do in NCERT. We prepare curriculum, we prepare textbooks, and in every textbook, in the foreword we say that all this need not be followed as such. I will take an example. Take a book for class 5 on environmental education. This book cannot be same in Kerala and in Manipur or in Assam. It has to be different. And therefore, the local element of the curriculum must be brought by the concerned board, state board. And this is what has been happening. But there are certain schools which are managed centrally. There are Kendriya Vidyalaya Sangathan, there are Navodaya Vidyalayas, then there are schools which are not affiliated to state boards but to Central Board of Secondary Education. It can affiliate a school from any province, anywhere. Now, most of these schools, because the policies they follow, they accept NCERT books. Many states also accept NCERT books, and now NCERT permits them to reprint. That is how it is happening, that is how it is maintained. The basic intention is that the levels must remain same. If a child from province A goes to some competition, national level competitive examination, he should not be at disadvantage to some other boy who is coming, boy or girl, who comes from province B. That is how we.
Thank you very much. Then Brian, I have one question to you. Your recommendation was that we should not do additional things, but we should now collect everything we have and communicate it to the market. In many cases, I see that we communicate in our language as educational language, and the people we are talking with, the stakeholders in the ministries, the teachers understand us, but the stakeholders, the politicians, the people in the ministry don't understand us because we are talking too much in our language. Do you see this also in what you are in South Africa or something, or did you already solve this, that you are able to bring your message to the people?
Thank you. Before I respond, allow me to thank the organizers of the conference and the Copyright Clearance Center for enabling me to be part of this interaction, which I have enjoyed immensely. I think that was precisely the focus of my presentation, that sometimes we get engrossed with our own perspective. We speak our own language, we highlight our own problems. We pick out what legislation and the changes are doing to us. We don't go behind what is it that informs them. We don't go to the language that they speak. I think the theory of critical systems heuristics requires you to go to their side and really say what is driving them, what is it that will make sense to them, how do you become part of the solution. When, for example, we met in Parliament for the first time, when we were discussing the copyright issue, the chair of the portfolio committee said, which insane person would be against the bill? And yet the bill was suggesting that all usage for copyright should be free. Conduit and platform operators like the Big Five should actually be part of the content owners when they distribute it, not distributors. And that everything produced by a teacher should actually belong to the state, which was going to be an annexion of copyright. And the question was, which insane person would be against this? Then we called for a workshop where we sat down with them. We presented the PwC, we presented the ecosystem, we started talking to them. We said to them, what problem are you trying to solve with the laws that you are coming with? And we then began from understanding those problems to say, how do we best inform a solution by working together? And what that has done is to really create some form of tension within the portfolio committee itself, where those that understand where we are coming from begin to say, we think there are dangers with the way the bill looks at the moment, and we think we are causing unnecessary harm. We think there are solutions that we can actually learn from the industry and work with the industry. What the situation looks like now, because the bill is coming back in May, is that our legal counsel, for example, has been co-opted among the people that are going to redraft the bill so that it creates a good balance between the rights of users and the rights of those that are coming through. So your question is critical. We really need to understand the other language. We need to move towards resolving the problems, and we need to anticipate those problems while we have a chance before it becomes a problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The question, yeah?
Hello. Yes, I am the publisher. I'm a publisher that of a house from Bangladesh that called Omicron Publishing House, and I'm the Director of International Affairs in the Academic and Creative Publishers Association of Bangladesh. I have a question on something. The education-based publication business in our country is greatly affected by a subsection of the law that bans all kind of supplementary and related books to the education, and as well as the coaching centers, private tuition, and house tutors. As you know, the publishers are not business owners. We want to contribute to strengthen the backbone of our country, and education is the backbone of our country also. We know that not all the children can cope up together, and we need to help them by publishing books from different level of understanding that fits every student specifically with their education. And there is no textbook in the world that can fit all the students. That's why we need teachers and supplement books. So my question is this a valid law? As we are facing this from 1980, that was introduced until the grade 8, and now it is extending after 2017 until grade 12. That means all the educational books published by the publishers that related to education. Actually, it will kill, I think it will kill 100% of related supplemental books in the whole industry. Thank you.
Somebody want to answer on this question?
सवाल उनका था कि वो
I really don't think that the question should be whether the law is a correct law or not. Once it has been passed, it has been passed, and then it has to be enforced. The question is, how did we get to that law? What type of problem were they going to solve? And if we would like to have that law repealed, how do we seriously understand what in the first place drove them to coming up with that law, and then work with them? The issue of language that Werner was speaking about is critical, because there is a certain language that got them there. I don't think there is a vindictive attempt by policy to wipe out the industry. There is a problem that they are trying to solve, and we can only survive if we help them solve that problem. Of course, you have gotten to the shove stage now where it is happening. What you then need to do is probably to look at the constitution of the country and whether that law is constitutional. You need to look at the other departments other than education and saying, what laws, what objectives do they have which relate to that objective? If there are contradictions that you see, then that's the next step, where you then go to something like the Department of National Planning or the Department of Policy Cohesion and say, here is what this department is trying to achieve, here is the national objective, this is how it is undermined by this, how do we harmonize those laws, and then try and get a solution out of that. That would be my limited view. I don't understand the situation fully, but I would generalize it that way.
See, in every society, there would always be a certain sprinkling of unscrupulous elements. We have faced this problem in NCRT, that of piracy, and we had to tackle it administratively. There is no other way out, because not everybody would follow the basic norms, not everybody would not follow the right trade practices. So this has to be done. The books that NCRT publishes are very low in its costing. Sometimes earlier they were subsidized also, but now they are not subsidized. But if you go to the market, the book would be available at 5 to 6 times. So naturally, once the books are released, many publishers, distributors, just put them in their stock and wait for some time before they are released. They are not available, even if they are really already distributed properly. So it has to be handled, even in educational administration, the leadership. And a point was raised about this, I think the chairman also raised the point, that not everybody in ministries people do not understand the language that we speak in the academic institutions. I had the rare privilege of having spent 5 years in the ministry as a senior bureaucrat also, and then I headed 2 organizations. I fully endorse that it is not always possible to convince the bureaucracy what type of actions are really necessary to smoothen the system and get over the problems, the one which you are mentioning. But we have to be on our own. We have to strengthen our internal mechanism. And in education, I will always talk about, so long as our systems follow certain norms, values, and principles, our problems will be minimized. There is no other way out.
Thanks. The things you advised, I know that we are discussing with the authorities for last couple of years. And of course, we are going to recommend something, what they are planning to do at the end of the day, what they want. And we are going to work with them. But of course, I did not find any law that other country like Singapore and also in India. So I see many publishers still publishing the same kind of book, and the education system now in our country is totally creative education system that is called, and it is being inherited from Australian syllabus. So there is no open-ended question, there is no question in the book, so there is absolutely no way to answer from the book. But the book can discuss on the subject, and it is always, we think that it is the extension of the subject and the points that is discussed in the textbook. So in what law actually it prohibits, is there any special IP rights law, that means intellectual property, that educational publisher they are actually infringement, there is any infringement taking place or something else. I don't understand this part. So if I also was about to ask the question in the IP section, but I think that this is the right section to ask the question, that is the strengthening the education publication sector. So I think the IPA can, what is my expectation from the all over the world and the publishers who are educating the nations on their own, because sometimes we publish books for the international publishers, international countries. Now we are also focusing, being a Bangladeshi publisher, we are also focusing educational books for the Africa and Singapore also as well. We are working with a couple of publishers called Macmillan is one of them, in the Marshall Cavendish in Singapore. So we understand this, Singapore, if Singapore can work with it, India works with it, why not our country? And why not ministers? Because I saw the IP section, India follows the rules of UK, USA, and Netherlands, the law they followed. So all the laws are taking decisions by the court or something, abiding the practicing law in the other countries. So in that case, why it's not happening? And why not IPA is taking a strong initiative all over the world, including our country, to ease the total things, because it needs really a discussion and a matter of policy from international perspective and the local perspective as well. Thank you.
Sorry, yeah, okay. Please.
We have concluded that we need a support system for educational publishers. Are they really serious about that? I just want to know. They are just, all the work is being in routine. So this support system, the way they are following and the way we have been told systematically how you develop things, I don't think this is being followed. So I think some support system here is also required. I am Sarojini Preetham, I am Vice President, Authors Guild of India. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you much. I totally agree with you, and I'm, as in the EPF, I'm internationally in many countries, and I think education is nearly everywhere the same. That's my finding. They have the same problems and they have the same issues, a little bit different. 20% is different, or in some states it's more different. But I think we understand each other very well, and I think to set up a support system should be possible. Yes, I will talk with IPA about this. Are there other questions, recommendations, or?
Just one thing.
Joe?
Yes, very important, talking about freedom to choose. We know that teachers are the cornerstone of any educational system. And when we're talking to governments, we are always trying to make them see about neutrality and diversity. We as a publishers, we are not only producing content for students, but we're producing a lot of content for teachers. And we do a lot of training for them. So they are the most important thing in education. They are not robots, fortunately. They are really our hope for all our educational system.
Thank you. I think I have one last question, Rajneesh, to you, because Professor Singh said we have to redefine our business, and I think that's something I hear sometimes, and I think we as a publisher can give an answer on this. So can you give your view on this recommendation?
I guess the redefinition, little what I understood is essentially on many aspects of that, whether the content consumption can be redefined, or can we really look at modular sort of what has been given as an example. Can we kind of really look at our content disaggregation and therefore a modular consumption? Can we redefine in terms of ingesting ourselves well into the technology? Can we look at using the best of the practices around the world to impact that learner? That's the other piece. Can we look at not only steering the content for the assessment, but also for a learning. That's the other definition. Can we kind of put some of the contemporary set of things, which is what we are talking about, coding, computational thinking, English language learning, reading. One of the last report which was presented by Asar in India talks about in India the biggest problem which we have is the reading and writing. Is there a way that we can redefine that how does the learner consume or write or read? Is there a way that we can define for researchers? You know, Professor Singh was giving us some great ideas as to how the contemporary sort of university press or publishing houses can really take the content and make that content more engaging with the students, create some sort of accreditation or some certification program around that. All that kind of stuff is really a repurposing, redefining.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I very often heard, yeah, you want to protect your print market, your textbook market, and all the things. And I think if we look behind what you're saying, we are not a print company anymore. We are a solution provider. So that's very often not seen by the people who are looking at us. So, but I think that's also everywhere. So, are there any last questions? I don't see. So I want to thank you for listening to us. I want to thank IPA and FIP for organizing this, and that we had the possibility to talk about education in this area, in this very international area. So thank you very much, and especially thank you very much to all the speakers here for talking and for listening and for all the things. Thank you very much, and I think we end on time. Good. Thank you very much.
Yes, indeed, very much on time. Thank you, esteemed chair, and thank you, esteemed speakers. May I request you all to please kindly remain with us for just a minute more on the stage. We have memento presentation. To present a memento to the esteemed speakers and the esteemed chair. Starting with Mr. Rom Wiesens, may I request Mr. Rajiv Vora to please join us on stage to kindly present a memento to the esteemed speaker. Mr. Rajiv Vora is now joining us on stage to present a memento to our esteemed speaker, Mr. Wiesens, Managing Director, Wiesens Wiese, Spain. Thank you for being a part of this session. Thank you, Mr. Vora, for joining us on stage to do the honors. To present a memento to the esteemed speaker, Mr. Brian Vafavarova, may I invite on stage Mr. Himanshu Gupta. Thank you, Mr. Vafavarova, for being a part of this session. Thank you, Mr. Gupta, for joining us on stage to do the honors. And now to present a memento to the esteemed speaker, Professor Dinesh Singh, I have the pleasure of inviting on stage Ms. Monica Malhotra Kandhari. Thank you, Professor Singh. It's been a pleasure to have you here with us for this session. Thank you, Ms. Kandhari, for joining us on stage to do the honors. And now to present a memento to the esteemed speaker, Mr. J.S. Rajput, may I invite on stage Sri Naveen Gupta. Thank you, Mr. Rajput, for being a part of this session. Thank you, Mr. Gupta, for joining us on stage. And now to present a memento to Mr. Ratnesh Kumar Jha, may I invite on stage Ms. Razia Rahman Jolly. Thank you, Mr. Jha, for being a part of this session. Thank you, Ms. Jolie, for joining us on stage. And now to present a memento to the esteemed chair, Mr. Vilmar Deepron, may I invite on stage Mr. Sanjeev Goswami. Thank you, Mr. Deepron, for being a part of this session and sharing it. Thank you, Mr. Goswami, for joining us on stage. And with that, I'd once again thank the esteemed chair and the speakers for being a part of this session and making it very interesting for us. With that, we conclude the pre-lunch session, which was entitled Strengthening Education Publishing Capacity. May I request you all to please take your seats back in the audience? Well, ladies and gentlemen, before we take a break for lunch, we are very proud to share with you all that the lunch is sponsored by Repro India Limited. And ladies and gentlemen, this afternoon we have a luminary amongst us. It gives me great pleasure to introduce him to you all. Dr. Pramod Khera, Executive Director, Repro India Limited, is a pioneer in technology-based education to millions of students, first in an IIT and then as Managing Director of Aptech. As Executive Director of Repro India Limited, he is leading Repro's initiatives to disrupt and transform the publishing industry with cutting-edge technology to bring in quantum efficiencies in the entire value chain, from publishers to readers, reaching all publishing titles to their readers anytime, anywhere. And this forum would be happy to know that Dr. Khera's passion for books did result in his authoring his own book, which was an instant bestseller in its own right. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and give a warm welcome on stage now, Dr. Pramod Khera.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks for the kind introduction. It's a pleasure to be here amongst all of you, and I would like to thank IPA and FIP for giving us this opportunity to sponsor the lunch and of course to interact with everybody. The IPA Congress was a very enriching experience for all of us. And the theme of innovation meeting experience, I think that was very, very apt. We discussed issues on IP, on copyright, on censorship. Plus also got a lot of insights on the global market as well as the Indian book publishing market. At Repro, with over 20 years of experience in servicing the publishing industry through printing and other services, we also looked at how we can merge the digital disruptions which are happening in the industry and how we can create something, maybe create a platform which a good friend, Mr. Vikas Gupta, talked about earlier in the day, that can help the publishers disseminate their content either digitally or in the printed form. So when we looked at the publishing industry, we realized that there are three key disruptions which were impacting the industry. One was the printing technology which was going digital from offset. Second was the product itself was going digital from printed books to e-books. And the third was the selling process. The way the books were being sold, it was moving online. And we were seeing that a lot of the bookshops were disappearing. So we said that this is an opportunity for the publishing industry to consolidate and to relook at how they are conducting the business, and maybe we can be a catalyst, maybe we can provide a platform which can help them do this transition. And under this initiative, we launched two initiatives, one what we call Rapples, another one was Rappler Books on Demand. Rapples was taking the books from school publishers, converting them to e-books, and integrating with a whole education delivery ecosystem which we implemented in schools. And some of the initiatives that we were able to do in some schools along with Cambridge under the Cambridge Learn brand were very successful. Coming to Rappler Books on Demand, that was mainly seeing how publishers are able to sell their books online, sell their entire catalog without being out of stock, right? So we have today listed around 3 million titles which we're selling on 7 platforms, online platforms, and these books are never out of stock because we print them on demand. When the order comes, we print the books. And we have aggregated a lot of titles from Indian publishers. We also are getting a lot of international titles through Ingram. And as a reverse arrangement with Ingram, we are also selling, distributing these titles globally. That means giving a platform to Indian publishers to sell their books around the world. So that's what we have been trying to do with a lot of support and help from all of you. Once again, I would like to thank each one of you. I would like to thank FIP and IPA for giving us this opportunity to present ourselves over here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kera. It's been a pleasure to have you here with us. And thank you for your kindness and generosity in sponsoring this lunch. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to break for lunch. But before we do that, once again, a gentle reminder for all of you who have already registered for the Agra trip. Please do not forget that you have to be up and about, ready for breakfast at 6:30 a.m. because at 7 a.m. sharp, the buses will leave. So do make sure that you get some food in your stomach before you are ready to leave for the trip. So breakfast is being served tomorrow morning at 6:30 a.m. sharp. And for those of you who might have changed their mind to visit Agra in the meanwhile, we are still accepting some more registrations, and now is a good opportunity to do so. But the window is very small, so if you want to register, now is the time to do so, because we shall be closing it in about an hour, because immediately after lunch, the registration for Agra trip will be closing. So last and final call, in case you're planning to visit Agra, please do go ahead and register your name. And in case you are leaving for Agra, please do not forget to join us for breakfast at 6:30 a.m. Meanwhile, it's time for today's lunch. Let's go and enjoy. Thank you. You all that the lunch was sponsored by Repro India Limited. It gives me great pleasure to once again, with that, invite on stage Dr. Pramod Khera and Sri Rajiv Vora. Let's welcome them both on stage with a round of applause, please. And to do a special honor for both of them, may I invite on stage Mr. N.K. Mehra, Dr. Ashok Gupta, Sri Naveen Gupta, Sri Ashok K. Ghosh, and Sri Pranab Gupta. May I request them all to please join us on stage. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, our thanks to Dr. Pramod Khera and Sri Rajiv Vora and Repro India Limited for their kindness and generosity. Thank you, Dr. Khera. Thank you, Sri Vora, for joining us on stage. May I request all the organizing committee members to kindly stay back. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you all know, there is a trip to Agra which is being organized, and we are proud to share with you all that lunch in Agra tomorrow afternoon is sponsored by Oswal Books, Oswal Publishers, Vikas Books Limited, and Upkar Prakashan. And we have with us today Mr. Naresh Jain, who is here on their behalf. May I invite him to please join us on stage? Mr. Naresh Jain, if you're here, please. And we would also like to share with you all that if you haven't registered for the Agra trip, well, the final and last call has already come and gone. Now the opportunity is also gone. No more registrations being accepted. However, once again, a gentle reminder that if you are a part of that trip, please do not forget to join us at 6:30 a.m. tomorrow for breakfast. So ladies and gentlemen, with us on stage, Mr. Naresh Jain. Let's put our hands together and give him a round of applause. We'd like to thank the organizing committee members for having joined us on stage. And since Mr. N.K. Mehra is a part of this session, maybe he could have stayed back. With that, it gives me great pleasure to also invite on stage the esteemed chairperson, Dr. Michael Coleman, IPA president. Let's welcome him on stage with a huge round of applause. So ladies and gentlemen, there they are, the esteemed chairperson of this session and our first panelist in this session. May I request you both to please take your seats. And I also take the pleasure of inviting on stage Mr. Peter Wiley, amidst your applause, Chairman John Wiley and Sons, a very warm welcome to Mr. Wiley. And let's welcome on stage Mr. Sanjeev Goswami, Managing Director, Springer Nature India. May I request him to please join us on stage. A very warm welcome, Mr. Goswami. So before we start the session, a brief introduction to the esteemed chair. Dr. Michael Coleman is Senior VP of Information Industry Relations at Elsevier and President of the International Publishers Association. Since joining Elsevier in 1995, he has held various core publishing roles in Amsterdam and Tokyo. He launched one of the first online journals in the industry in 1996, New Astronomy, and Michael was managing director in Frankfurt, Germany. For 10 years, he spearheaded academic relations for Elsevier, building up a global network of ambassadors engaging in strategic discussions with research leaders. Prior to Elsevier, he worked for Wolters Kluwer in a division that is now a part of Springer Nature. He holds a degree from Leiden University in the Netherlands and a PhD in astrophysics from Columbia University in New York, where he studied with a Fulbright scholarship. So the loss of astrophysics is the gain of the publishing industry. Ladies and gentlemen, the esteemed chairperson.
Thank you for the introduction and welcome everybody. So we're going to talk today about STM publishing. And I know there are many colleagues who are from other parts of publishing, and you think, bunch of academics are going to talk about merging black holes and condensed matter physics. It's after lunch, I can lie back and kind of relax a bit. You are wrong. We are actually going to talk about disruption. And disruption is important, whether it's in STM publishing, trade publishing, children's publishing, or any kind of publishing. So I really hope that you will pay attention and see to it what you can learn from what science publishers are doing wrong perhaps, or doing right, and how that translates to your type of publishing. And I'm very happy to ask you some questions afterwards during the coffee break. What is the lessons that you learned or not, or the lessons you have for us? Very good. So we have a distinguished panel here, and I quickly introduce them. It's Mr. Mehra, and Mr. Mehra graduated from Delhi University, just around the corner. He started his publishing career in 1959, so before I was born. Very impressive. He joined Springer Verlag, so now Springer Nature, in 1963, and he also launched his own publishing house, Narosa Book Distributors and Narosa Publishing, and has a very close link to Springer throughout his career. And currently, as I'm sure you're aware by now, he's the president of the Federation of Indian Publishers. Welcome, Mr. Mehra. Then we are very honored to have Peter Wiley here. He's currently the chairman emeritus of Wiley Publishing. He was the chairman of the Wiley Board of Directors from 2002 to 2015, so a long period. And he is the 6th generation of Wileys to play a leading role in the company. He's also an historian. He co-authored Empires in the Sun. He published about Japanese-American relations, and he's a journalist. So we're very happy to have Peter here as well. Welcome, Peter. And then the third panelist is Sanjeev Goswami. His career started as McGraw-Hill. He worked for Oxford University Press, but currently he's the managing director of Springer Nature India, and last year he was Entrepreneur of the Year. So welcome, Sanjeev. Good. So I have very many hats, not only the president or the chair, but I'm also now the first speaker. And I think I have to go to the other side to find my slides. I see slides. There they are. Excellent. Oh, I like this. Very good. So the question that we are addressing is why STM publishing has not been disrupted yet. So I hope we'll answer that all in 1 hour. The panelists are introduced. So what is STM? So that we're all on the same level. Science, technology, medicine. It's about scholarly peer-reviewed journals and books, and very much today about, of course, platforms, digital platforms and solutions. The market estimate, 35 billion, so substantial. It's growing, if you look at the number of articles, by 2.5 million every year, and a growth rate of 3.5%. So compared to the other growth rates which were mentioned this morning, it's very modest, but I mean for an established market, it's very healthy, I would say. And the market leaders are represented here. We are talking about disruption. So what is disruption? And you see it well illustrated here. So innovation means doing the same things a little bit better. And then you can do things dramatically different in a way that you disrupt the market, and actually you make things that make the old things obsolete. Now, academic publishing has been around for centuries. So the question is, why haven't we been made obsolete? What is it that we're doing right? And so look at disruption. What can we learn from big disruptors in the market? And we have 4 listed here: Alibaba from China, Uber, Facebook, and Airbnb, who all happen to be American. So the thing that they have in common, and you see it here for Uber, it's the biggest taxi firm, but they don't own a single vehicle. Facebook, the biggest media firm, but they don't create any content themselves, and that got them into trouble, of course. Airbnb, in a way, the biggest provider of accommodation that doesn't own any real estate. And Alibaba, the biggest retailer in the world without any retail themselves. So let's look a little bit under the hood what is happening in disruption. So take Airbnb. So what do? They tap into this potential of empty rooms, empty apartments. And also they tap into this, I would say, volunteer labor force. If you would rent out your own room, you will do these tasks that other people do here in this hotel. You start cleaning, you'll receive the guests, etc. And then, of course, they make the connection between the room, the renter, and the guests. Uber is the same way. You have all these cars which are standing on the road not being used. You have guys who are watching Netflix all the time, so have lots of time at their hands. You make this connection between the drivers, the cars, and the passengers. In fact, what they do, these disruptive businesses, they optimize this network, and they do that through big data solutions. Okay, so let me quickly introduce Elsevier at this stage. For you, those of you who don't know the company yet, founded in 1880. Actually, it was based on another company, it was founded a couple of centuries before. It's part of the RELX group, that's how you pronounce it, RELX. Today, Elsevier positions itself as a global content analytics company. So take note, there's no publishing in there. It's in the world of STM, it's a large company. In the world of large companies, it's a mid-size, so more than £2 billion in turnover. We publish 420,000 articles every year in 2,500 journals. And then we have an archive of 13 million articles and 30,000 ebooks. The most popular brands are Science Direct, our journal platform, Scopus, Mendeley, and Cybel. We're very active here in India. We have 4, say, RELX group offices around the country. We sell our global content here in India, of course, for science and technology. In the area of health, extremely active. We have original Indian authors that we support in their publications, but we also translate our global content for the Indian markets. Our biggest office is in Chennai, and 85% of all our journals worldwide are produced here in Chennai, in India. Of all the books that Elsevier publishes, 100% come out of Chennai, and 45% of the health books. So extremely large operation, and India is therefore very important for us. Good, back to disruption and Elsevier. This article appeared in Forbes in 1995, when the internet became alive, so to say. And Forbes wrote this article and said, well, it's clear who's going to be the first internet victim, and it was Elsevier, or the Reed Elsevier at that stage. You cannot read the details, but I thought it was very interesting, because in the introduction they say it's a shocking amount that people pay for the journals. There's one journal where you have to pay $3,000 per year, which I thought was kind of funny if you think about the price of journals today. We don't know who this famous man is, so he has been long forgotten, but it's very clear that this prediction did not come true. And what did companies like Elsevier do? We embraced the internet. Other, really strong drivers of disruption in the world of STM was in the area of business model, platform, and I would say the journal model. So in the area of business model, 10 years ago, a new model appeared, and it's called open access. We're all familiar with a business model where the reader pays mostly through the subscription model. Now in science, they've turned this around, it's very refreshing, and they say, well, I think the author should pay, and then the articles are freely available for everybody. Open access model, and you see this diagram here explaining, and once you publish open access, this is how it was presented 10 years, you have more exposure for your work, practitioners can apply your findings, you will be cited more, your research will influence policies, the public can have access, you are compliant with your grant rules, people that give you money for research, the taxpayers get better value, and researchers in developing countries can see your work. Now, it could not be better, brilliant model, and people predicted that this will disrupt the STM industry. Another disruption was about the social platforms, just like you have Facebook. There are specialized Facebooks for science, and people predicted that would also disrupt STM publishing 10 years ago. And the third one is preprint servers, where authors would put a version of their article, a very early version, on a server freely available for everybody. and people predicted that will be the end of the journal model. So what happens if we look 10 years later? This is the landscape today. We live in a world of open science very much driven by politicians, by policymakers, etc. Everything of science has to be open access, open metrics, open platforms. And for some of us in the world of publishing, open is often equated with free, and that makes us a little bit nervous. But the openness is an interesting one. Then there are these Facebooks of science I mentioned. A very prominent one is ResearchGate, another one is Mendeley. And what we also heard on day one of the Congress, there is this illegal sharing site, this pirate site called SciUp. So this is a bit the landscape today, and so let's see what happened in STM publishing, what we did at Elsevier, and essentially answer the question why we're still here, why haven't we been disrupted? And so one of the key areas I would say is we have that quality information. We have the top brands, the top journals, very good metrics. Another is that scientists turn out to be our customers, our users, turn out to be conservative. You know, you can tell them, why don't you embrace open access? They will sure say, well, I want to publish in the journal I've always been publishing in, which is the most respected journal in my community. We have this trusted source. We are the platform of trust. It's peer-reviewed, it's curated information. We have guaranteed accessibility. You might love SciHub because it's for free, but how reliable is SciHub? And this is well illustrated. I opened the Moscow Book Fair, and exactly at that time, SciHub was no longer available to researchers in Russia. Complete coincidence, by the way, but it was because the owner of SciHub was pissed off about something that happened completely unrelated to the platform, and she decided on her own that nobody in Russia would have access to SciUp anymore. So we, as publishers, we provide this very guaranteed accessibility. So maybe we're also very good at absorbing disruption. For instance, we have been fully embracing digital technology, well illustrated by the slide that Elsevier would be the first victim of the internet. We have been absorbing open access. Elsevier is the largest green open access. So open access comes in two flavors. It would be too easy for academics, to make it simple. So open access comes in two flavors, gold and green. Elsevier is the largest green open access publisher. Springer Nature is the largest gold open access publisher. So these incumbents have completely embraced this disruptive new model for part of their publications. In the areas of Facebook of science, Elsevier has acquired Mendeley, and it's now a very powerful platform where people can exchange data, articles, etc. Preprint servers, Elsevier acquired also a preprint server in the social sciences. Another way where you can kind of prepare yourself for this disruption is that publishers moved outside of this very narrow area of only traditional journal publishing. So we see that publishers are now active in workflow solutions. They are there to support researchers to acquire data, for instance. And so in a way, we can also help them with analyze our data. We have very much big data solutions. We can provide analytical solutions. So Elsevier, therefore, is, was maybe an information provider. Now we've become an advisor so that our end users can take the right decisions. So this is just a list of my interpretation why we have not been disrupted, and I'm sure the other panelists have their perspective on it. And I think I'll go now to the first one and invite you over here. And it's Mr. Mira. Are you ready for your presentation? And you can do it either there or from your seat, whatever is best for you. Great, thank you. Over to Mr. Mira. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Coleman. I am a little bit overwhelmed sitting between the giants of publishing company and me representing a small, compared to them, a small STM publisher. We started about 50 years ago. There was a time when I worked with Springer Verlag. I learnt a lot from Springer Verlag on STM publishing. And I had a close understanding with them that when I work with them, at one stage I will set up my own companies. And they agreed in principle, but they, with a rider, that they would like to see how the whole thing progresses. Over a period of a few years, it was proved to them that we can do a good job and that I can go ahead and set up the Indian companies. At that stage, they also suggested that maybe at that time Kluwer was being distributed in India, Elsevier was being distributed in India, John Wiley was being distributed in India, and they said, we will form a company for you. Kluwer, Elsevier, and Springer. But somehow it didn't work out because Elsevier thought it would be a clash of interest. So it was Nandi Mehra going alone and setting up the companies. After the companies were set up, we started searching for authors, Indian authors, and we had a very clear mind that we will project Indian writing to the scientific world abroad. And this is something which had not been done in India till that time. So a search started. We went to the IITs, we went to the institutes of management, we went to the medical institutes, we went to the Tata Institute of Mathematics, Tata Institute of Fundamental Research in Bombay, and the atomic research centers and so on. So we thought we would make a combination of textbooks at the college level and some research and reference books that we would do with the authors. Over a period, the news got around that there is a new publishing house who is willing to project the Indian authorship outside to the international world. So slowly, slowly, ever so slowly, we collected authors and we talked to them. And we published their works. The reviewers were nobody but scientists who were working in the similar fields, and the authors themselves will recommend to us pluses and minuses it has as to who to go to get a review on the book that they have written. Finally, we succeeded. What happened over the years was that we signed agreements with almost every publisher over here, including the ones on the table, on my right here. And there were prejudices about publishing coming from India. A case comes to my mind where a publisher took 500 copies of our book. We shipped it to their warehouse in Singapore, and we were shocked to receive a report that all copies are damaged. This is something which we could not understand. We thought maybe the person nailing the boxes made a mistake and a few copies on top are damaged or something like that. We wrote to them. But the reply we got was, our warehouse manager has said that they're all damaged. So we had to take a decision. We asked them to ship the entire shipment back to us. And fortunately, the managing director of that company was in India at the time that the consignment came. And we said, he was visiting us in the office, and we said, let's go and have fun. We went to our warehouse, we opened the consignment, and not one single copy was damaged. So this is the prejudices that we